Chapter 831. As soon as he said that, Wu-Ming jumped in through the window. Sir Villo. Shadora was shocked. Please use the front door in the future, Mandela said sternly, but Wu-Ming didn't listen at all. The one who came to support you was my clone. The real me encountered an enemy outside the city. Wu-Ming sat down next to Mandela and began to explain. So that means that golden giant was a gift from Sir Villo. That's amazing. Shadora's small eyes blinked. After all, this kind of summoning ability from a giant was very rare. However, Mandela didn't care about this. What he cared about was that the one who came to support was a clone. Even a clone was this strong. By the way, Sir Villo, did you destroy the enemy? Shadora asked with concern. Wu-Ming shook his head. They had the gift of teleportation, so they ran away. Of course this was a lie. Even if he was an ally of Salamandra, Wu-Ming wouldn't tell them that he let Galji and the others go after the deal. First of all, with Mandela's personality, he would definitely criticize Wu-Ming's behavior again. Although Wu-Ming didn't care about Mandela's words, it would save him some trouble. Secondly, in a sense, he was cooperating with Galji and the others. If this spread out, it would have a slight impact on No Name. Is that so? Indeed, if it was the gift of teleportation, then it would be troublesome. Shadora nodded as if she understood. Although Shadora was a little disappointed that she didn't catch them. After all, even if those people weren't the mastermind behind the attack on Flame Capital, they definitely had something to do with this attack. As the leader of Salamandra, Shadora loved her people like her own children from the bottom of her heart. Flame Capital suffered such a disaster, and because Shadora didn't protect the people well, she naturally became hostile to the enemies who caused all this. However, compared to hostility, Shadora blamed herself more. Wu-Ming saw a trace of self-blame in Shadora's eyes, so he comforted her. The enemy is not an ordinary person. He has an even greater power behind him. It's understandable that Salamandra is unable to stop him. This was also the reason why Wu-Ming had let Galji and the others go. If they killed Galji and the others, the people behind him would definitely send new people to cause trouble. In that case, it would be better to leave Galji alive. After all, Wu-Ming had a good understanding of the other party. It would be easier to deal with him the next time they met. Lord Villo, you don't have to comfort me. Our Salamandra is indeed lacking in many aspects. As the leader, I cannot absolve myself from the blame. After all, Salamandra was a community that relied on numbers. They didn't have any high-level combatants. In addition, after the death of the previous leader, Shadora, who had succeeded the position, was too young. Salamandra had been in the 5 digits for a while now, and they were almost unable to hold on. If it wasn't for the smooth hosting of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony and the news of Shadora's victory against the Demon King, which greatly increased the reputation of Salamandra, Salamandra would have been transferred to the 6 digits outer sect. However, it was different from Luoz's intention of transferring Perseus to the 6 digits. Luoz took the initiative to transfer Perseus to the 6 digits, so that he could spend the rest of his life eating and drinking. Perseus originally had a strong foundation. If Luoz worked a little harder, no matter how bad his talent was, he would still be qualified to stay in the 5 digits. In the end, because of Luoz's squandering, Perseus lost the ability to stay in the 5 digits. In the end, because of Luoz's lack of foresight, Perseus was disbanded. As for Luoz, it was unknown whether Luoz was dead or alive. Shadora, on the other hand, had no choice but to move her Salamandra to 6 digits. In the end, because of Shadora's tireless efforts, Salamandra was able to maintain the 5 digits. Shadora's position as the leader of the hierarchy was also gradually accepted by the people. Don't be depressed, Shadora. When you grow up, our Salamandra will definitely welcome the peak again. Mandela said, his eyes filled with hope for the future. Yes, brother, I will definitely work hard. Shadora also encouraged herself. She couldn't be depressed just because of this. At this time, Wu-Ming also spoke. I heard that the reason why Shadora took over the position of leader is because her bloodline is denser. I don't know if it's true. This was something that Wu-Ming had heard by accident. The reason why Mandela didn't take over the position of leader, but rather the younger Shadora, was because Shadora's bloodline was much denser than Mandela's. That's right. Our ancestor is the Star Sea Dragon King. Shadora has a bloodline power comparable to the Star Sea Dragon King. When she grew up in the future, this bloodline power would become Shadora's backing, allowing her to fully qualify to be the leader of the hierarchy. It would also allow Salamandra to gain a foothold. This was also why no one publicly objected to the young Shadora taking over the position of leader of the hierarchy. They only privately stirred up trouble. One shouldn't bully the young for being poor. After thinking for a while, Wu Ming spoke. If I find my body again, I can help you. Shadora and Mandela were taken aback. They didn't quite understand what Wu Ming meant. My body is also a dragon. I don't think I'm any weaker than the Star Sea Dragon King. My blood should be able to strengthen Shadora's bloodline power and make her stronger. Putting aside the fact that Thous and Yes and No Name were allies, just based on Shadora's personal attitude towards No Name, Wu Ming wouldn't be stingy. So Sir Villo is also a dragon? Then this must be fate? Shadora stood up excitedly. All the dragons under the heavens were one family, and Wu Ming was their ally, Salamandra. In addition, Shadora had always had a good impression of Wu Ming, and now it could be said that they were even closer than before. Ahem. Mandela coughed and motioned for Shadora to calm down. Let's talk about it in the future. Shadora doesn't need a sudden surge of power. She needs to work hard step by step. To be honest, Mandela admitted that Wu Ming was strong. However, he didn't think that Wu Ming was weaker than the Star Sea Dragon King. Anyone would give empty promises. In the end, it was still a matter of fact. Wu Ming, who understood Mandela's meaning, only smiled casually and didn't say anything. It's about time for me to go back, Wu Ming said as he stood up. Are you leaving already, Sir Villo? We haven't thanked you for coming to help us. Shadora wanted to ask Wu Ming to stay. At least a simple meal was good enough. No, I still have to go pick up Vera. Wu Ming walked to the window as he spoke. Speaking of which, is there anything important in Salamandra? Wu Ming's sudden question stunned Shadora. Something important? We don't have anything important here. Sir Villo, I wish you a safe journey. Mandela suddenly interrupted. After looking at Mandela for a few seconds, Wu Ming nodded. Okay, I got it. Then, Wu Ming jumped out of the window. At the same time, Wu Ming heard frantic voices behind him. Please remember to use the front door in the future. Chapter 832. Between the 3999999 outer gate and the 4000000 outer gate, where the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony was held and where Absolute Evil's clone had attacked not long ago. On the clock tower that Wu Ming had repaired in the past, Vera sat alone on the edge of the clock tower, looking at the town that had yet to be repaired due to the attack of Absolute Evil's clone. As the wind blew, Vera's huge but harmonious twin ponytail swayed gently. Vera, who was already unusually beautiful, was even more moving in the silence at this moment. If Maxwell were here, he would probably go crazy with excitement. However, even if it were someone else, if they saw this scene now, they would also be stunned by Vera. For example, Wu Ming, who came to pick up Vera now. As soon as Wu Ming walked out of the teleportation gate, he saw such a picturesque scene. Looking at this scene, coupled with the cool breeze on the clock tower, Wu Ming's last trace of dissatisfaction for not being able to catch Maxwell disappeared. Why was it the last trace? Because most of his dissatisfaction disappeared because of the deal with Galgi. Seeing Wu Ming's arrival, Vera, who was sitting on the edge of the clock tower, immediately got up and jogged to Wu Ming's side, grabbing his sleeve again. Are you hurt? The fairy-like voice once again entered Wu Ming's ears, bringing great pleasure to Wu Ming's mind. Of course I'm not hurt. The only person who can hurt me is probably myself. Wu Ming hadn't been hurt for a long time, except for the time when he fought with Gitia. Only the black mud of the same origin could cause serious damage to Wu Ming. The other damage to Wu Ming was negligible. Vera nodded and continued to ask. Is it done? Without a doubt, Vera was asking about Maxwell. He ran away. I don't know about that guy's resurrection ability, so I can't kill him now. Wu Ming shook his head. Vera was surprised. After all, every time she met Maxwell, she could only run because no matter how she attacked and killed Maxwell, that guy just wouldn't leave. He had an, I'm not afraid of you look on his face. And Wu Ming was able to chase Maxwell away, which made Vera look at him in a new light. However, Maxwell was only so obsessed with Vera. When you love a person, no matter what she did, you would think it was her love for you. For example, Vera kept killing Maxwell, and in Maxwell's eyes, it was Vera's love for him. One had to admit that Maxwell was a freak. However, Maxwell wasn't a masochist in the face of Silent Cry's constant attacks. Since he couldn't beat him, he would just leave. Reality was that reality. However, immediately after that, Vera felt a little uneasy to kill Maxwell. As if she could see that Maxwell would continue to tail her in the future, Vera's grip on Wu Ming's sleeve tightened. "It's okay, Vera. Next time, I will take care of him." Wu Ming's eyes flickered. She didn't know if he thought of a solution. Vera was puzzled. Why did Wu Ming say, "Can't kill him," and then say, "I will take care of him"? Although they had only known each other for a short time, Vera had a good impression of Wu Ming. He wasn't an arrogant person. Wu Ming patted Vera, who tilted her head in confusion and kept her in suspense. "You don't have to kill Maxwell to take care of him. Trust me, don't think about Maxwell for now." Vera nodded. Just like Wu Ming said, she just needed to trust him. Next, there was the problem of Vera's whereabouts. "I'm going back to No Name. Do you want me to send you back to the outer door of Willow's Wisp?" Wu Ming asked. But Vera shook her head. Wu Ming was stunned for a moment before he reacted. "I'm the one who thinks too highly of myself." Vera could control the realm door. When he went to the outer door of 54545, it was Vera who took him there. Therefore, it was easy for Vera to go home by herself. And Wu Ming had never been to the outer door of Willow's Wisp, so he couldn't send her back. "Then you can go back by yourself. I'll go first." Wu Ming opened the teleportation door and was about to walk in. He had to hurry back to No Name and give Laetitia and the others a surprise. But Wu Ming realized that Vera, who was pulling on his sleeve, didn't have any intention of letting go. "Let's go together," Vera said calmly. They were both ghosts and had the same teleportation door ability. Moreover, Wu Ming was willing to help her deal with Maxwell. Vera liked this kindred spirit very much. Therefore, Vera felt that following Wu Ming would be better. Anyway, she was wandering around the North District by herself. If she didn't follow Wu Ming, would she have to wander around by herself and be followed by Maxwell again? But this made Wu Ming helpless. "You are the leader of Willow's Wisp. Is it okay for you to wander outside for a long time?" If Ren wandered outside for a long time, not to mention the other members of No Name, even Ren himself wouldn't forgive himself. No, it shouldn't be said like that. It should be said that Ren wouldn't do such a thing. However, it was Vera who nodded her head. After all, her Willow's Wisp was a big business, and the people of Willow's Wisp were used to Vera slacking off daily. Thus, Vera expressed that there was no problem. In any case, Wu Ming once again understood why Vera wasn't the leader of the hierarchy. "Then let's go back together." Following Vera's nod, the two entered the teleportation door. 2105-380 Outer Gate. No Name's headquarters. In the room that belonged to Wu Ming, a dark purple ripple appeared. Wu Ming and Vera walked out. "You're back." Wu Ming let out a long breath. This trip to the North District was really tiring. But, in the end, it was still a fruitful trip. "Is this considered a Willow's home?" Vera suddenly asked. This question made Wu Ming fall into deep thought. Logically speaking, the Great Root should be Wu Ming's home. However, although the Great Root was the home that Wu Ming had always been pursuing, Wu Ming didn't really want to stay there forever. It was fine if Wu Ming didn't cherish it after he got it. In any case, Wu Ming liked to interact with people. That kind of life was a good life for Wu Ming, and he didn't want to quietly sleep alone in the Great Root. How do I put it? This place is like home, but it's not home. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's a place to rest, because I won't stay in this place forever. Wu Ming replied. Although Wu Ming didn't like to stay in the Great Root, but Wu Ming only had one home, and that was the Great Root. But the definition of home is different for everyone. In my opinion, it's not a place where people gather that is called home, but a place where there are people who are worthy of being entrusted with. That place can be called home, and the current No Name, to me, is such an existence. Although Wu Ming didn't join No Name for long, and he left not long after, feelings were hard to define. Wooming, 16th Night, Black Rabbit, and the others got along very well, and they were very much to his taste. Moreover, they were sincere to Wooming, so there was no reason for Wooming not to treat them with sincerity. And because of this, the home of No Name was formed. And this conflicted with the former, which was why Wooming said that it was like home, but it wasn't. In short, whether it's a home or not, just enjoy the life in front of you. If you think too much, it'll be very hard. Vera nodded thoughtfully. Let's go, Vera. Let's go out. I've prepared a surprise for my companions, Wooming said as he pulled Vera towards the door. I wonder if 16th Night and the others are back. With that in mind, Wooming pushed open the door. Chapter 833. Gotcha. Opening the door, he was greeted by a petite figure. Wah! Letitia, who didn't expect the door to open by itself, bumped into Wooming and let out a whimper. Master, you're back. Letitia took 2 steps back, shook her head, and asked in embarrassment. Sorry, Letitia, I just came back. I didn't expect to see you at the door. Shaking her head, Letitia smiled. I just wanted to clean the room for Master. As she said this, Letitia also noticed that there was an extra person behind Wooming. Master Vera? Then, Letitia recovered from her shock. Although I can almost guess what the reason is. It should be Maxwell's doing. As Letitia said this, she looked at Wooming with some jealousy. Letitia was clearly the one who was following Wooming around. Ahem. Speaking of which, Letitia, is everyone not back yet? Although it was better to let 16 Knights and the others stay in the Southern District, it was not the territory of No Name. Although it was safe to have 16 Knights and the others, it was not good to take the initiative. How could the safety of the Southern District be left to the people of the Eastern District? Whether it was the Southern District or the Eastern District, it would have a huge impact. Wooming didn't think that the smart guy 16 Knights wouldn't have thought of this. But Letitia shook her head. Not yet, but I think they should be on their way. Letitia was also a very smart person. What Wooming and 16 Knights understood, Letitia naturally understood as well. If that's the case, I'll wait for everyone to come back before I take out the surprise I prepared. Wooming smiled mysteriously, took Vera around Letitia, and left the room. Surprise? Letitia tilted her head, puzzled. In the end, Letitia shrugged and walked into Wooming's room. After all, cleaning had to be done. In the corridor, Wooming dragged Vera, who didn't know what was going on, and strolled along. Although I want to show you around No Name, I'm going to find White Wuxia. Are you going to follow me or stay in No Name to rest, Vera? Wooming said to Vera without looking back. Vera didn't say anything. She could do whatever she wanted. Vera, it's better for you to stay in No Name. I'm only going to White Wuxia to give him some information. I'll be back soon, and it's very safe here. Maxwell won't come. There's no need for him to keep following me. Vera nodded and replied softly, However, he had to find someone to keep an eye on Vera. He couldn't let Vera stay in a room alone and wait for Wooming to come back. Should I go back and look for Letitia? However, just as Wooming was thinking, Lily suddenly walked out from the corner in front of him. Sir Villo, are you back? Then, Lily noticed Vera, who was pulling on Wooming's sleeve and hiding behind Wooming. What a cute child. Sir Villo, who is she? Lily looked at Vera curiously. She seemed to be very interested in Vera. Because she had never seen Vera before, and Lily wasn't familiar with the leader of Willow's North District, Vera Ja Ignifost, Lily didn't think that the charming and cute little girl behind Wooming was such a big shot. Instead, Wooming's eyes lit up and he nodded. This is Vera. I met her in the North District. Vera, what a cute name. Lily jogged to Vera's side and held her hand. I'm Lily. I can call you Vera. Vera tilted her head and looked at the little fox girl Lily. She didn't say anything, but her eyes kept wandering between Lily and her chest. This made Lily's expression gradually freeze. From the looks of it, Vera and Lily were about the same age. It was just that her chest developed a little too quickly. Because Vera was behind Wooming, Lily didn't notice it at first. Lily smiled a little awkwardly and kept numbing herself in her heart. It's just that I developed slowly. I'm going to White Wuxia's place. Can I ask Lily for a favor? Lily was taken aback, but then she nodded. Of course, Lily just happened to have some free time. What is it? Wuming smiled and pointed at Vera. Help me look after Vera, how about it? Lily naturally had no objections. Of course, I'll get along well with Vera. Looking at Lily's smile, Wuming felt that it was the right thing to do not tell Lily about Vera's identity. That's it, I'll leave it to you. Opening the portal, Wuming looked at Vera again. Get along well with Lily, don't bully her. Wuming saw the scene of Vera showing off her chest to Lily before. It made sense that natural airheads were all black when cut open. Aha! Vera nodded obediently. Then I'm leaving. She plunged into the black and purple ripples of the portal. Have a safe trip, Lily responded enthusiastically. Okay, Vera, this is your first time in our community. I'll show you around. After Vera nodded silently, Lily took Vera's hand and walked around. And Vera quietly took out a hammer from behind where Lily couldn't see. 21053880 Outer Gate, 1000 Yes, Branch. In the room where White Yiksha often stayed, the black and purple ripples appeared and Wuming jumped out. No one. Standing up, Wuming looked around in confusion. Usually, White Yiksha would sit here and drink tea, eat snacks and rest. But with the current situation, it was understandable that White Yiksha didn't have time to be so leisurely. But at this moment, the door was pushed open. Kacha, a white-haired lowly walked in. It was White Yiksha. Oh, you're back. White Yiksha wasn't surprised by Wuming's arrival. She closed the door, calmly walked to her usual seat, found a cushion, and sat down. Wuming sat down as well. I found a new clue. Then, Wuming told her the information about Galji and the others, as well as his own speculations, in an extremely indirect manner. Galji, ha! A hint of hatred appeared in White Yiksha's eyes. It wasn't hatred for Galji, but hatred for the people behind Galji. I didn't have a good impression of that bunch of stubborn people from the beginning. I just didn't expect them to attack boxing. What White Yiksha was talking about was naturally the unknown faction behind Galji. Although she didn't know who it was, White Yiksha was sure that it was one or more of the upper levels of the boxers. As White Yiksha spoke, she could not help but release an invisible pressure. Wuming could naturally sense White Yiksha's anger, so he didn't say anything else. After a while, the pressure disappeared, and White Yiksha calmed down. What should we do next? Wuming asked casually. As a senior of the boxers, White Yiksha naturally had more right to speak than Wuming. White Yiksha wasn't in a hurry to answer this question. Instead, she asked Wuming. What do you think? Deal with it as it comes. Chapter 834. Wuming said without hesitation. The enemy's true goal was completely unknown. Although Wuming wanted Galji to reveal some information during the deal, Galji expressed that it might disrupt his plan to pursue freedom, so he rejected it. Wuming, who did not have enough bargaining chips, could only give up and simply carry out some transactions. I guess that's the only way. White Yiksha sighed helplessly. The box court was an incomparably mysterious world. Naturally, the other party's goal was even more difficult to guess because of this mysterious world. Not to mention that the box court's own people were playing tricks behind the scenes. At that moment, Wuming closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. White Yiksha was not idle either. He took out his gift card and took out 2 teacups and a teapot. The teapot automatically poured tea into the teacups. I say, White Yiksha, how many are there in the human final trial? Wuming opened his eyes and suddenly asked. White Yiksha picked up one of the teacups and took a sip. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Wuming. Oh, you want to start with Galji himself? White Yiksha immediately understood what Wuming meant. Of course. Wuming shrugged, picked up a teacup, and took a sip as well. Then he put it to his right. Galji is a tool that was born less than 3 years ago. In this box court world that values inheritance, other than Galji's own nature, I can't think of any other place that would need this useless tool to play a role. Just like other stories and myths, there were many heroes like Galji. However, there was only one nature. Galji could not be said to be the best, but it was also extremely rare. The nature that Wuming mentioned referred to Galji's nature of coming to save the world at the end of the world. The end of the world for humans is probably referring to the human final trial, last embryo. The box court world was greatly influenced by the so-called inheritance. Like a law, if humans were unable to defeat the final trial, then humans themselves would walk towards destruction. And didn't the final trial of mankind require a savior-type hero like Galgi to appear and defeat, the apocalypse of mankind? Only Galgi, who had such an inheritance, could perform the magnificent feat of saving the world, humans. And gods are inseparable from humans, Wuming said, thinking of his experience in Mesopotamia. In order to connect the gods and humans, the gods created the wedge of heaven and the lock of heaven in an attempt to bind the gods and humans together. Would the gods of Box Court need to do the same? No, there was no need for that. Box Court was a world where mystery existed, or rather, it was a world created for the sake of allowing mystery to exist. Also, if one had to say something, the gods and humans of the Box Court had already been separated. After the gods came to the Box Court, the separation of the gods and humans was completed. With the development of time, humans advocated science and abandoned mystery. However, as long as humans were still around, the gods would at most weaken. In any case, they would not completely disappear. Therefore, the gods of Box Court did not need to spend so much effort to connect the gods and humans like the gods of Mesopotamia. Wuming's gods are inseparable from humans had another meaning. The separation of the gods and humans was inevitable, but the two existed in different worlds. As long as humans were still around, the gods would be fine. However, if humans were to go extinct, it would be a serious blow to the gods. Could it be that some gods want to save humans through Galgi and pass the human final trial, last embryo, to finally achieve the goal of saving themselves? However, if outsiders were to hear this, they would definitely think that this idea was ridiculous. Because almost no gods would do that. White Yuksha shook his head. You also said, almost, right? Wuming smiled. If it was not absolutely, then it was a possibility. White Yuksha was speechless. He could only bury his head and drink his tea. However, he also indirectly agreed with Wuming's words. After all, the gods are not without desires. White Yuksha raised his head and said calmly. If humans were to go extinct, then they, who had eternal life, would not live for long. Since that was the case, there would always be gods who would start preparing for a rainy day. However, I still say the same thing. Almost no gods would do that. This was just like the organizers of the lucky draw who had already decided on the winner. It did not conform to the rules. But not everyone has to eat with their right hand, right? There were always exceptions. The so-called rules were used to restrict the weak. Artificially liberate the human final trial, last embryo, and let their own pawns cross it to save their own lives. Wuming raised his hands as if he was weighing a scale. Then, he continued. It's fine even if you fail. Give up everything you can. As long as you're still alive, there will always be a chance to solve it. As Wuming spoke, he slammed his right hand down as if it was a part that needed to be abandoned. However, they never thought about how disastrous the consequences of failure would be for others. Coincidentally, the hand that fell hit the teacup that Wuming had placed to his right. The teacup tilted and collapsed, spilling tea all over the floor. I'm not targeting anyone. I don't have a good impression of most gods. I can imagine how bad they are. After all, Wuming was on the side of humans. Be careful. White Yuksha looked at the floor. She was quite dissatisfied with Wuming's tea spilling. Speaking of which, what is your brain made of? You can actually make such a connection. To be honest, White Yuksha increasingly felt that Wuming's words made sense. Galgi's existence itself is a very big point of suspicion. If there really was another purpose, then why did they deliberately let a prop that had been born less than 3 years ago do it? This was obviously a problem. They had to send an experienced person to do it. This meant that this matter had to be done by Galgi. However, Galgi's superiors had arranged for someone to keep an eye on him. That person was Maxwell. Not only did Galgi say, "We are not on the same side," but Maxwell himself also revealed the feeling that he was not on the same side as Galgi. It was no wonder that they would hide their secret operations. Once they appeared in front of the world, they would definitely be guessed through their names, actions and other aspects. For example, Wu Ming, who had already obtained a lot of information, boldly made a guess. Well, let's put this problem aside for now. Let's talk about the human's final trial first. No matter what, as long as there was a glimmer of possibility, he had to grasp it and explore it in depth. Actually, I was once one of the human's final trial. White Yuxia seemed to recall a long time ago as her eyes showed a trace of absent-mindedness. You? The human's final trial? It was no wonder that Wu Ming was stunned. This was like knowing the true identity of the old man who had been your neighbor for decades was Superman. What? I'm the sun's astral spirit after all. A manifestation of the heavenly oracle. White Yuxia glared at Wu Ming proudly. I got it. Please continue. He extended a hand and politely motioned for White Yuxia to continue. Fortunately, Wu Ming's ability to accept things was very strong. Even if you told Wu Ming that White Yuxia, this lowly, was once a mature sister, he would still accept it. In short, it's fine as long as you know that I'm one of the humans' evil. Chapter 835. I once used the identity of the White Knight Demon King to wreak havoc in the original box court. I used the identity of the human final trial to wreak havoc in the box court. Putting down the teacup in his hand, White Yuxia began to explain seriously. But due to the development of science, humans gradually understood incomprehensible phenomena and existences. For example, humans understood that the heaven-shaking theory was wrong. Correspondingly, White Yuxia's strength was greatly weakened. After my heaven-shaking theory spirit lattice was exploited, I was defeated and finally converted to Buddhism. From this, it could be seen that although humans were weak, humans had a great influence on powerhouses who were restrained by legacies. Then, White Yuxia, will you become an enemy of humans? Wu Ming wasn't concerned about whether White Yuxia would become an enemy, but he was worried that White Yuxia would be suppressed if he became an enemy. The so-called human final trial was for humans to train. This meant that humans would be defeated in the final trial. Oh, are you concerned about me? White Yuxia narrowed his eyes with a sneaky smile. After all, they were friends, so he was naturally worried. However, Wu Ming didn't want to admit it when he saw White Yuxia's smug face. I'm considering whether to plan ahead on how to kill you, Wu Ming answered without hesitation. That's a pity. Due to the heaven-shaking theory being unraveled and my conversion to Buddhism, my rights to the human final trial have stopped. But then, White Yuxia's tone changed. However, if I return the Godhead and retrieve the spirit lattice, the rights to the human final trial can still be reactivated. Is that so? Wu Ming nodded. This was one of the reasons why White Yuxia didn't retrieve the spirit lattice to fight the Demon King 3 years ago. However, if it really comes to that, I will have no choice but to return to the upper levels of the box court. Even if White Yuxia didn't want to return, the people in the upper levels of the box court wouldn't let a 2-digit box court powerhouse stay in the lower levels. Although White Yuxia would only think for the people in the lower levels by staying in the lower levels, once this precedent was set, it would be troublesome for other powerhouses to run to the lower levels in the name of being the ruler of the social class. Don't doubt it. Some people like to be a local tyrant. But if you leave, it will be quite troublesome. Wu Ming looked helpless. If I leave, I will recommend you to be the ruler of the Eastern District. White Yuxia did not hide anything. In fact, when White Yuxia promised Wu Ming that he would protect the East District and no name, even if he had to return the Godhead, White Yuxia had already made up his mind. I don't want to be the ruler of the hierarchy and cause trouble every day. There's no other way. I can only put in more effort to make you obediently stay at the bottom. Looking at Wu Ming's appearance, White Yuxia could not help but laugh. Since you've said so, it seems that I can only do as you say. Then, the two returned to the main topic. Other than the earth-shattering theory, there are many other theories about the last embryo, such as dystopia, wandering endgame, absolute evil and so on. But, White Yuxia paused. Basically, these demon kings of the last embryo are no longer a threat for the time being because of the various measures taken by the people of the box court. Therefore, White Yuxia did not think in this direction. You said it yourself that it's only temporary. Galji and the others might want the last embryo to reappear, Wu Ming asked. For example, human evil. When he saw Absolute Evil's clone, White Yuxia had said that Absolute Evil had been sealed. but the community in charge of guarding Absolute Evil's seal told me that the seal is intact and no suspicious people have been found recently. After experiencing the attack of Absolute Evil's clone, White Yuxia immediately contacted the manager. Moreover, ever since No Name sealed it 200 years ago, the seal has always been perfect and has never been broken. Absolute Evil was sealed by No Name 200 years ago? Wu Ming really did not know about this. After all, No Name was once the largest community in the East District. Naturally, it had some glorious results. White Yuxia shook his head matter-of-factly. Looking at White Yuxia's smug expression, those who did not know would think that White Yuxia was the one who sealed Absolute Evil. If that's the case, the place where Absolute Evil was sealed is probably related to No Name. Now it was still managing the seal of Absolute Evil. It was probably an ally of No Name 200 years ago. That's right. The community managing the seal of Absolute Evil is an ally of No Name, White Yuxia said slowly, then looked into Wu Ming's eyes. The current 5-digit community in the North District, Salamandra. Wu Ming was deep in thought. Long ago, Wu Ming had guessed that Galji and the others had attacked the outer gate of the 54545 for some reason. The reason why he only suspected this was simple. The East, South, West, and North districts had all been attacked by Absolute Evil's avatars. The West district was not attacked a second time. The South and East district were attacked a second time in the same place. Only the North district was attacked a second time in a different location. Wu Ming originally had some guesses about this. With a series of clues and the fact that White Yuxia said that the place where Absolute Evil was sealed was the headquarters of Salamandra, perhaps Galji and the others really did something in the outer gate of the 54545. However, the conditions for unsealing the seal of Absolute Evil are very special. White Yuxia's next words attracted Wu Ming's attention. Very special? Then White Yuxia extended a finger. First you must have Sun Sovereignty. Sun Sovereignty? Wu Ming's expression changed slightly. It was unknown if he thought of something bad. What's wrong? White Yuxia noticed the change in Wu Ming's expression and asked kindly. Nothing. Speaking of which, Sun Sovereignty should be very difficult to collect, right? Wu Ming shook his head and continued the current topic. No matter where the sun was or which world it was in, it was a crucial deciding factor. There were tens of thousands of god groups in the box court world, and each god group had an existence related to the sun. Therefore, in order to take care of the many powerhouses related to the sun, Sun Sovereignty was divided into 24 portions. However, if I remember correctly, you should have more than half of the Sun Sovereignty, White Yuxia. It was said that White Yuxia had 14 Sun Sovereignty. In that case, there were only 10 suns scattered outside. However, 10 Sun Sovereignty was not enough for hundreds or thousands of god groups. However, although that was the case, if it was someone from the upper echelons of the box court behind Galji, it was reasonable to have 1 or 2 Sun Sovereignty. However, White Yuxia's next words shocked Wu Ming again. Not only do I have multiple Sun Sovereignty, but my enemy also has multiple Sun Sovereignty, and there are 6 of them. In that case, wouldn't there be only 4 Sun Sovereigns left outside? In that case, Sun Sovereignty was even rarer. It was no wonder that it was a condition for unsealing. Even so, having Sun Sovereignty was still one of the conditions. The second condition for unsealing is the Star Sea Dragon King's horn. Wu Ming knew about this. The Star Sea Dragon King was Shadora's ancestor. It was said that the horn on Shadora's head was transplanted from the Star Sea Dragon King, and it was a horn with great power. However, the Star Sea Dragon King's horn is currently on Shadora's head in perfect condition, Wu Ming said. He had just met Shadora. Shadora's horn was still bright and beautiful, and there was no damage at all. It was impossible that someone had secretly replaced Shadora's entire horn. No matter how weak Shadora and Salamandra were, it was impossible for them to be that weak. Are there any other conditions? Wu Ming was more or less relieved. There is a third condition, which is the last one. White Yuxia's expression became serious. Seal the flag of the community of Absolute Evil. Chapter 836. Hearing this, Wu Ming could not help but narrow his eyes. The flag of the community that seals Absolute Evil. Wasn't that the flag of No Name? That's right, it's the flag of No Name White Yiksha said with certainty. So, my guess was right. Wu Ming said subconsciously. What did you guess right? White Yiksha looked at Wu Ming in confusion. This had nothing to do with what she said, right? I always feel like you've been hiding something from me. Facing White Yiksha's suspicious gaze, Wu Ming could not help but laugh. How could that be, cough cough? Let's call it a day. At this moment, Wu Ming seemed to be in a relaxed state. Wu Ming's sudden relaxed state made White Yiksha begin to complain. Don't be too relaxed. Although the Sun Sovereign is rare, if there's someone behind the other party, it's not impossible to get it. The Star Sea Dragon King's horn is even more so. As for the flag of no name, don't forget that 3 years ago, no name was taken away by the Devil King. Combined with the information you provided, it's most likely those people. To put it simply, White Yiksha was quite worried about whether the other party would break the seal of absolute evil. Don't worry, the enemy can't do anything anymore. Standing up, Wu Ming stretched his body. But White Yiksha still wanted to refute, but Wu Ming immediately interrupted him. All right, I've prepared a surprise for Ran and the others. I have to go back and prepare in advance. With a wave of his hand, black and purple ripples appeared beside Wu Ming. Do as you please. White Yiksha took a sip of tea in a fit of pique. Don't worry, White Yiksha. Wait until tomorrow. You'll know why I'm not worried that the seal of absolute evil will be broken. At that time, please take care of no name. With another wave of his hand, Wu Ming plunged into the portal. The portal closed immediately. I'll know tomorrow? Take care of no name? What do you mean? Bai Yiksha, who didn't like to keep people in suspense, complained unhappily. Then, he took out his gift card and prepared to take out some snacks to eat with the tea. However, like unpredictable fate, White Yiksha seemed to realize something as his eyes suddenly widened. Could it be? Looking at his reflection in the teacup, Bai Yiksha smiled. So that's what you mean. There really is such a guy. He took out the desserts from the gift card and put away the gift card. White Yiksha held a teacup in one hand and a dessert in the other. Well, if that's true, then it's a happy ending. Then, White Yiksha took a bite of the snack. At the entrance of No Name's headquarters, a dark purple ripple appeared, and Wu Ming jumped out. Wu Ming had not walked through the main entrance for a long time, so he decided to walk through the main entrance. Have we arrived? Looking at the 2 huge magic puppets guarding the door in front of him, Wu Ming walked in without hesitation. They were not summoned by summoning tools like the magic puppets in the manor. These 2 huge magic puppets were high-level magic puppets that Wu Ming summoned from the inherent enchantment, Nazalik's underground tomb. If it was someone without authorization, the 2 gigantic magic puppets at the door would stop the person from entering. If they tried to force their way in, they would be attacked by the huge magic puppets. Of course, the magic puppets could only stop low-level tiger men like Jard. If someone like Maxwell tried to force his way in, these 2 magic puppets could only act as an alarm at best. In the end, they would have to rely on other people in the community. However, with these 2 magic puppets guarding the door, it felt quite cool. In short, it was better than nothing. Walking into the courtyard of No Name, Wu Ming saw a bright and beautiful scene. Different from the dilapidated scene he saw when he first walked through the main entrance, the scene Wu Ming saw now was completely different. The barren land became full of vitality. The originally dry river was filled with clear water, the seemingly broken house was renewed, and the courtyard that did not have any greenery was now full of vitality. Not bad. Wu Ming was quite satisfied with this. Although Wu Ming did not often wander around No Name, he was still a member of No Name. Wu Ming was happy to see No Name become better. Wu Ming was happy to see No Name become better. Moreover, when he thought about the things he successfully traded with Galji, Wu Ming's mood became even better. By the way, although I wanted to take Vera around before, it seems like I haven't been to No Name much myself. Wu Ming said as he walked around No Name. However, as Wu Ming walked around, he noticed that there was a problem not far away. Wu Ming quickly walked over and saw Pest and Vera confronting each other, while Lily stood at the side, not knowing what to do. Moreover, if Wu Ming was not mistaken, there was a hammer on the ground beside Pest. What happened? Wu Ming could not help but ask. Sir Villo. Lily's voice was full of surprise, as if Wu Ming's arrival had completely resolved the situation between the two. However, that was more or less correct. When Vera saw Wuming, her short little legs fluttered as she ran to Wuming's side and pulled on his sleeve. When Pest saw Wuming, his face paled even more. It seemed like he was still a little afraid of Wuming, but not as serious as before. What's going on? Wuming did not look at anyone but Lily. After all, the onlooker had a clearer view. I was bringing Vera around when we suddenly bumped into Miss Pest. Then Vera attacked Miss Pest with a hammer, and then... Lily did not continue, but Wuming understood. After that, Pest probably sensed Vera's danger and did not attack her directly. Instead, they stared at each other and started a confrontation. From the looks of it, Wuming could more or less guess what had happened. Pest, are you hurt? As the victim, Pest naturally needed to be concerned. How could I be hurt by a mere hammer? I was just a little annoyed that I was suddenly attacked, and it was my head. Although Pest was touched by Wuming's kindness, he was still very afraid of Wuming, and his voice was filled with weakness. Since you're not hurt, you can leave first. Wuming knew that Pest was not hurt, so he did not question his words. I know, Pest said in an aggrieved tone. Then, he left without stopping, as if he didn't want to stay any longer. Lily, you should leave too. Please take care of Vera for me. How could it be troublesome if I can help Servillo? Lily smiled in response to Wuming. It's almost lunchtime, so I'll leave first. See you later, Servillo Vera. With that, Lily left too. In the end, only Wuming and Vera were left. All right, Vera, why did I attack Pest with, a hammer? Wuming squatted down and looked at Vera. Because I was interested. It was a very short answer, but it left Wuming speechless. Was it only because you were interested in Pest? Vera even showed a surprised expression when she heard Wuming's question. It was as if she was saying, if it wasn't because I was interested, then what else could it be? All right. Wuming sighed helplessly. As expected, there was no lack of problem children in this world. Just then, Lily suddenly ran back. Servillo! Everyone is back. Wuming's eyes lit up. Finally back. Chapter 837. No name, as usual chat room come meeting room. Although there was a realm gate and it wasn't a long journey, after leaving home for a long time, the first thing to do after returning was to rest. You're finally back. Jiu Fei Niao sat on the sofa and elegantly took a sip of the black tea she had just prepared. Fei Niao is indeed a young lady. Haruai Hayashi, who was sitting next to Jiu Fei Niao and stroking the three-furred cat, couldn't help but say, it's just a habit. Do you want to learn etiquette? I can teach you. Jiu Fei Niao seemed a little excited and looked at Haruai Hayashi as if she was offering her services. However, Haruai Hayashi shook his head. That's not necessary. She wasn't cut out to be a young lady. She preferred to spend time with her friends naturally. After all, Haruai Hayashi's personality isn't suitable. Ren, who was resting on the opposite side, said weakly. After spending some time together, the members of No Name had a certain understanding of Haruai Hayashi, this seemingly innocent but actually two-faced girl. Haruai Hayashi didn't care about Ren's words at all and even nodded in agreement. I think that as our No Name's mascot, Black Rabbit is very suitable for learning etiquette. Haruai Hayashi said as he looked at Black Rabbit, who was also resting on the sofa. The Black Rabbit, who was resting with its eyes closed, jumped up when it heard someone talking about it. Its ears also twitched. Black Rabbit also has etiquette knowledge, Yao-san. Although Black Rabbit's etiquette knowledge may not be as good as Miss Fei Niao's, he doesn't need to learn it. Black Rabbit had the title of a Hakata aristocrat. In addition, Black Rabbit had been a judge for a long time, so etiquette was necessary for Black Rabbit. You didn't deny the identity of a mascot, Black Rabbit. Haruai Hayashi covered his mouth and snickered. Yes, that's right. You didn't deny the identity of a mascot. Jiu Fei Niao didn't cover her mouth and snickered, but she also gave Black Rabbit a proud smile. Ren could only smile awkwardly. Teasing Black Rabbit had become a daily routine of No Name. And no way, Black Rabbit is not a mascot. Black Rabbit, who was once again teased by the two of them, blushed. You two problem children, don't always think about teasing Black Rabbit. Just as Black Rabbit was about to get angry, 16 Knights, who was standing by the window, suddenly spoke. It's so noisy. Black Rabbit, everyone just came back. Can't you be quieter? 16th Knight's solemn words entered Black Rabbit's ears, which made Black Rabbit lower its head in shame. I'm sorry. Of course, her face was still completely red, but this time, it was out of guilt. The others didn't say anything either, as if they were affected by 16th Knight's suppressed tone. However, at this moment, 16 Knights suddenly turned around. Speaking of which, didn't that Willow guy come back? Why can't I see him? 16 Knights didn't seem to be suppressing his emotions at all as he looked at everyone excitedly. The Black Rabbit was stunned. Who was the one who said to be quieter? It was as if Black Rabbit was hallucinating when he said that. After being separated for such a long time, I really miss him. No matter what, we should have a good fight. Ha ha ha. 16th Knight laughed, but his laughter sounded like mockery to Black Rabbit's ears. Could it be? Rin suddenly realized that 16th Knight was playing with Black Rabbit again. However, Xiaofan Niao and Haruhide Maseraki looked like they had already guessed it. Sure enough, Mr. 16th Knight is the biggest problem child. Black Rabbit was once again driven mad by his antics. Gotcha! At this moment, the sound of the door being pushed open attracted everyone's attention. You're still so energetic, everyone. The voice was heard before the person was seen. Then, a familiar face with black hair and red eyes appeared. Mr. Willow? Black Rabbit shouted excitedly. Mr. Willow, long time no see. Ren stood up and politely greeted Wu Ming. Long time no see, Willow. Xiaofan Niao gracefully greeted. Haruhide Maseraki, who was not good with words, only nodded at Wu Ming, but the smile on his face was particularly conspicuous. Wu Ming did not reply to them one by one. He just looked at them one by one and spoke to everyone. Everyone, long time no see. Then, Wu Ming had a smile on his face. Yo, little brother, I missed you so much. 16th Knight, who was standing by the window, walked toward Wu Ming, flipped over the sofa with one hand, and jumped in front of Wu Ming. You've been doing well recently, haven't you? Wu Ming smiled helplessly. First, he participated in all kinds of gift competitions in the Southern District, and then he was attacked by Absolute Evil's clone. 16th Knight must have had a good time punching him. Thanks to you, ha ha ha. At the same time, Wu Ming and 16th Knight reached out a fist each and gently touched each other. Then, Wu Ming looked at everyone. Although I know you're probably tired, I've prepared a surprise for you. Do you want to take a look? Surprise? Ren, Black Rabbit, Xiaofan Niao, and Haruhide Maseraki were stunned. Don't keep us in suspense. Hurry up and take it out. 16th Knight put one hand on her waist and waved the other hand in the air. Xiaofan Niao and Haruhide Maseraki also nodded. Since it was a surprise, he had to take it out directly. That was the understanding of surprise by problem children. However, Wu Ming began to keep them in suspense again. There's no rush when everyone is here. However, when he said that, everyone was basically here. For example now. Knock knock. The door that Wu Ming had not closed was politely knocked twice. Then, Lily's voice came from behind Wu Ming. Willow, Sama, I've brought Letitia-sama and Miss Pester here. Wu Ming smiled slightly. Please take a seat, everyone. In the conference room next door, for the first time in 3 years, there were a lot of people gathered. Near the wall, there was a very dignified rectangular table surrounded by the main members of No Name. Actually, this room was the real conference room. The previous room was just a chat room for the members of No Name to rest in. Sometimes, they were too lazy to change places, so it was used as a conference room. At the front was the leader of No Name, Ren Russell. On Ren's left and right sat Wu Ming and 16th Knight. However, this was slightly beyond Ren's tolerance limit. Let's forget about it. Ren's forehead was sweating due to nervousness. You're the leader, Ren. Wu Ming sighed. It's natural for the leader to sit at the top. 16th Knight smiled. Our No Name is going to rise in the future. You have to work hard to master the calmness of a leader. Wu Ming said while knocking on the table. Besides, we're all on the same side. What's there to be nervous about? Just be normal. However, Ren just smiled awkwardly. It's because we're all on the same side that I'm nervous. Everyone believes in you, little guy. 16th Knight held his chin with one hand and pointed at the other no-name members. Ren looked at 16th Knight, then looked at the other members who were looking at him with encouraging eyes. He took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, I understand. Sitting at the top, Ren straightened his back and looked serious. I hereby announce that the official no-name meeting begins now. Chapter 838. This meeting was suggested by Mr. Villo, so the first speech will be given to Mr. Villo. Ren reached out his hand and pointed at Wuming. Wuming gave Ren face and nodded. This meeting was suggested by me, mainly because I want to share with everyone the surprise I brought back from the Northern District. Wuming said and looked at everyone. At this time, the seat next to 16 Knights, Haruai Hiroyuki, who was sitting there, raised his hand and said, "It shouldn't be an ordinary surprise, right? If it was an ordinary surprise, there would be no need for this kind of meeting." That's right. Wuming nodded and didn't say much. Because Wuming wanted to use action to prove it. Wuming reached out his hand, and the golden dragoness space ripple appeared on the table. The golden ripple moved horizontally, and a rectangular piece of cloth was spat out from the golden ripple and neatly laid on the table. This is... Ren, who was sitting at the head of the table, as well as Ryubi and Letitia, who were sitting next to Wuming, were all shocked and immediately stood up. A flag. Jio Yuko, who was sitting next to Haruai Hiroyuki, saw the truth of the cloth and was puzzled. It was a red flag with a golden border, and the pattern on the flag was a girl with hills and earth as the background. Miss Hiroyuki, that was our no-names flag. Lily, who was sitting next to Hiroyuki, said with a trembling voice. At the same time, a few drops of tears fell from Lily's cheeks. The reason why Lily didn't stand up emotionally was because Lily was crying so emotionally that she didn't have the strength to stand up. Our flag. Ren, who stood up, reached out his hand and wanted to touch the flag that belonged to no name. But because Ren was sitting at the head of the table and the position of the flag wasn't close to Ren couldn't touch it at all. On the contrary, Ryubi and Letitia, who were sitting next to him, easily touched the flag. That's right, it is indeed our flag, Letitia said with absolute certainty. Mr. Villo, how did you find our flag? Black Rabbit looked at Wuming with tears in her eyes. The emotional Black Rabbit also shed tears, and its voice began to tremble slightly. Just like Lily, it was the excitement and joy of the return of the no-name flag. I got it from the Demon King who attacked No Name 3 years ago. Following that, Wuming told everyone about what had happened between him and Galji. Wuming did not tell the members of No Name everything that had happened in the past. After all, it was too complicated. Therefore, Wuming only told them the important things. After he finished speaking, Wuming didn't do anything else. He just waiting for the members of No Name to digest the information he had brought. To put it simply, because you captured their important subordinates, you have forced them to complete this trade, right? 16 Knights easily understood the information that Wuming had brought. But Mr. Villo, why didn't you capture all of them? Maybe you could have investigated the Demon King who attacked our community 3 years ago. Black Rabbit asked Wuming rather excitedly. Calm down, you perverted rabbit, 16 Knights said rather rudely. Didn't you hear what Villo said? They have some power behind them, and they might even be from the upper echelons of the box court. 16 Knights' eyes were full of ridicule. Of course, 16 Knights was not ridiculing Black Rabbit, but the box court. The upper echelons of the box court created the box court, and then used others to cause trouble in the box court, causing a disaster to the box court. It was as if the partners of justice were actually the villains of the boss. How ironic. Zhou Fei Niao also opened his mouth to explain to Black Rabbit. If we capture all of them, the people behind them will send new puppets to the lower echelons of the box court. If that was the case, it would be better to let Galji and his people, who he knew pretty well, cast a long line to catch a big fish. Haruai Hiroyuki also spoke. Also, didn't Villo say that Galji has the tendency to betray the people behind him? Although Haruai Hiroyuki had no intention of befriending Galji, the saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," still made some sense. What Zhou Fei Niao and Haruai Hiroyuki said was actually the problem that Wuming had considered at the time. Therefore, Wuming did not choose to cooperate with Galji, nor did he choose to completely fall out with him. In the end, Wuming chose to make a trade with Galji. They did not form an alliance, nor did they form an enemy. It was just a simple trade, although Wuming was a bit rough. Galji and his people are not a threat. The key is that 4-digit demon king called Maxwell. After Wuming said that, the others also had a serious expression. He has an immortal body, so it seems that my fists are useless. 16 Knights shrugged and said in a relaxed tone, I'm afraid my ability won't be of any use either. Zhou Fei Niao shook her head. Haruai Hiroyuki looked at his hand, then looked at Wuming. Villo, you can't do anything to him either? I can't do anything with normal methods, but I haven't tried any other special methods. Then, Wuming looked at his palm and slowly clenched it into a fist. The next time I see him, I'll try to use a sealing technique to deal with him. If you can't beat him to death, then don't beat him to death. It was such a simple principle. But according to what you said, he won't easily appear in front of you, right? Zhou Fei Niao asked. Maxwell was scared by Wuming's blade of salvation, so he abandoned Galji and the others and ran away. Not to mention that it would be difficult to see him again. Maxwell would probably run away immediately after seeing him. I naturally have a way to make that guy walk into a trap. Wuming smiled and kept them in suspense. Keeping us in suspense again. Zhou Fei Niao snorted in disdain at Wuming's suspense and turned her head to the side. It's like wine, the more it is brewed, the more fragrant it gets. Wuming finished and looked at Ren, who was in deep thought. Ren, do you have anything to say? However, Ren sighed slightly. I'm a bit concerned about Galji. According to what you said, he is about the same age as me, but he was used as a prop less than 3 years old. The point was that Galji and Ren were the leaders of their respective communities. Plus, he was born less than 3 years ago as a prop, so the pain he suffered must not be any less than Ren. You can't sympathize with him, Ren. You know, because of Galji's plan, many people's families were destroyed and they died an unnatural death. Wuming's face was serious. If he was not worried about the power behind Galji, even if Wuming did not execute Galji and the others on the spot, he would have captured them and handed them over to White Yuxia. After all, a pitiful person must have something to hate. For freedom was not an excuse to hurt others. I'm sorry. Ren lowered his head guiltily. But 16th Knights refuted Ren. This is not something you need to apologize for. Leader, little thing. Kindness would sometimes bring about mistakes, but the starting point of kindness was never wrong. Also, leader, don't always show such a lack of confidence. You need to be more confident. Wuming shook his head helplessly. Listening to advice was a good thing, but don't always put your status so low. After all, Ren was the leader of No Name. Yes. I'm very sorry. Ren was at a loss. By the way, Mr. Varen, did you manage to get anything else from No Name from Galji? Black Rabbit quickly tried to smooth things over for Ren. Of course, even if I intend to let them go, I still have to skin them alive. Chapter 839. In the next second, Wuming took out a card out of thin air. It was Wuming's gift card. When Wuming and 16 Knights first arrived at the box court, the 4 of them went to White Yuxia to appraise the gift according to Black Rabbit's suggestion. At that time, White Yuxia gave each of them a gift card that could be used to store items. However, Wuming had the dragon nest space, so he didn't use it often. But, if it's this, I'm afraid my dragon nest space isn't suitable for storing it. As Wuming spoke, the gift card in his hand flashed. That was the sign that the item stored in the gift card was taken out. A dragon-like object and a ball of light filled with the aura of the sun appeared in front of everyone. This is a divinity and the sun? Pest, who had been sitting beside Letitia, was shocked and couldn't help but shout. Pest had been bestowed with the prestige divinity, so she was naturally familiar with it. As the incarnation of the Black Death who was closely related to the sun, Pest was also familiar with the power of the sun. Furthermore, Pest looked at the divine spark and the sun's sovereignty with a thirsty gaze. If she could obtain the rights to these 2 blessings in this loot-sharing convention, she believed, her strength would definitely undergo a qualitative change. Now, because of Wuming, she had reached 4 digits. If she added the divinity and sovereignty of the sun, even if she couldn't reach 3 digits, she would reach the peak of 4 digits. However, Pest could only think about it because the aura of this divinity seems like 16 knights couldn't help but look at the silent Letitia. Mr. Villo, could this be? Black Rabbit had more or less guessed it. That's right. This is Letitia's divinity and sovereignty of the son of Ophiuchus constellation, Wu Ming said with certainty. Pest, who heard Wu Ming's words, had a look of regret. Since it was a gift from Letitia in the past, then it definitely had nothing to do with her. Letitia's divinity? Zhou Yuan Flying Bird was stunned. Sovereignty of the son of Ophiuchus constellation? Haruai Hiroyuki stopped stroking his cat. As expected, these are all gifts from Senior Letitia. The Black Rabbit was overjoyed. As if reflecting Black Rabbit's words, the divinity and sun sovereignty slowly floated in front of Letitia. I didn't expect Galji to have Letitia's gift. Ren was quite excited. He was happy from the bottom of his heart that Letitia's things could come back. Divinity and sun sovereignty were not small items. One could transform a creature's body into the highest grade of a species, while the other was even rarer. There were only 25 sun sovereignty in total, not to mention that this sun sovereignty in Ophiuchus constellation was created for Letitia. More importantly, if the things that originally belonged to Letitia returned to her, Letitia's strength would definitely improve further. In this way, not only was No Name one step closer to its former peak, but Letitia had also completely recovered. Like a broken jigsaw puzzle, No Name would be pieced back together bit by bit. And Ren believed that with Wu Ming and 16 knights around, this jigsaw puzzle would be even more beautiful than before when the time came. In response to Ren's question, Wu Ming naturally nodded his head. Regarding this question, I will explain it later. Then, Wu Ming looked at Letitia. Okay, Letitia, quickly put away the divinity and sun sovereignty. But, Letitia hesitated. Master. Letitia looked at Wu Ming with guilt and gratitude. Her face was full of hesitation. Wu Ming, who already had a tacit understanding with Letitia, understood Letitia's eyes. Letitia was not willing to accept the gift that originally belonged to her. As for the reason? Perhaps it was guilt and self-blame for giving up her own power, or perhaps it was because she wanted to let others use it, or perhaps it was because she was satisfied with the power that Wu Ming gave her. All of these could be the reason why Letitia was not willing to accept it. But, no matter what, these were Letitia's things. Even if Letitia was Wu Ming's, even if Letitia took the initiative to give up these gifts, even if these gifts were separated from Letitia for a long time, no matter what, these were Letitia's things. This divinity was originally yours. It's just returning it to its original owner. As for the sun's sovereignty, among all of us here, Ophiuchus constellation is the most compatible with you. If you don't want it, then this sun's sovereignty is useless. After all, the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation was originally an additional sun sovereignty that the box court system created for Letitia. Don't be blinded by power, but don't take the initiative to give up the power that you deserve. Only with power can you protect the people you want to protect. The others didn't say anything, they just quietly watched this scene. If you still feel guilty, then take this power and protect No Name well. Protect the box court well. This is the atonement for your previous incarnation of the Demon King to wreak havoc on the box court. It's also the mission that I, as your master, have given you, Letitia. At that moment, without waiting for Letitia's reaction, Wu Ming forcefully stuffed Letitia's divinity and the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation into Letitia's body. Letitia sighed and smiled helplessly. Master, I understand. I promise you, this body will always be loyal to you. I will definitely carry out your will to the end. At that moment, Letitia's aura also suddenly changed. An invisible pressure spread out in all directions. Everyone present noticed Letitia's change. Even Lily was no exception. Now, with all of her previous power restored, plus the power that Wu Ming gave before, it could be said that Letitia was now at the top of the 4 digits. Now, even White Yuxia, who didn't return the divinity and spirit core, couldn't do anything to Letitia. Woo-woo. Pest let out a few unwilling whimpers. Damn it, I'm so envious. That's great. Senior Letitia. Lily's little tail wagged. If there was anyone who was the happiest, it would definitely be Lily. As someone who didn't have much battle power and wasn't part of the main force, but was able to sit together and discuss with everyone, Lily was naturally very happy to see her comrade's power rise to another level. If she didn't have any power, she would pray for her comrade to become stronger. If she couldn't protect her comrade, she would pray for her comrade to become stronger to protect the other comrade. As for herself, who didn't have much battle power, she just had to do what she was supposed to do, for example, do the logistics work that her comrade gave her. Thank you, Lily, Letitia returned Lily's bright smile. The surprise that Mr. Villo brought really scared me. We have to hang up our flag this way. Our no name will once again have a community with a flag. Black Rabbit excitedly held up the flag, ready to do as he said. Then, Wooming raised his hand to signal Black Rabbit to not be anxious. Don't be anxious, Black Rabbit. I also got something from Galgi. However, this frightened everyone. Hey you, did you really skin the other party? Chapter 840. 16th Knights ridiculed in an exaggerated tone. In fact, whether it was 16th Knights or the others, they were already surprised that Wooming was able to find the no-name flag. And Wooming finding Letitia's divine spark and sun sovereignty was also out of everyone's expectations. Not to mention the divine spark, there were only 25 sun sovereignty. Not to mention the number of people in Box Court, just the number of communities in Box Court was as many as the stars in the sky and the gravel on the ground. It was reasonable to say that Wooming was able to obtain the no-name flag, Letitia's divine spark and Afiyuka's sun sovereignty from Galgi. But they didn't expect that Wooming would actually ask Galgi to hand over other things. To be honest, everyone began to guess who was the person that Wooming had captured to be able to make Galgi suffer such a big loss. Seeing everyone's doubts, Wooming began to explain. My original request was to return the no-name item, but Galgi wasn't the mastermind behind the scenes, he was just a puppet, so I didn't expect to exchange it for many things. Wooming was hoping to get some other good things from Galgi, but he didn't expect Galgi and the others to carry so many gifts that belonged to no name. The no-name flag was taken out from her gift card when Wooming woke Ling up, and Letitia's divine spark and Afiyuka's sun sovereignty were taken out by Galgi. By the way, the gifts of Box Court could only be obtained through transactions, transfers, or gift competitions. They couldn't be stolen. The community flag was this type of gift. The Demon King used his authority to attack the no-name 3 years ago. The Demon King won, and the flag became the Demon King's possession. After that, the flag was transferred to Galgi, and Galgi transferred it to Wooming through a transaction witnessed by Box Court. If Wooming tried to steal it, the no-name flag might be invalidated by Box Court system. However, Box Ting system dispelled Wooming's thoughts of taking advantage of others. It was rather regretful. Asterisk cough asterisk cough asterisk. Asterisk in short, thanks to the Box Court system, Galgi was able to hand over everything that belonged to a no-name. The flag of no-name, Letitia's divinity, the sovereignty of the sun of the Afiyuka's constellation, and the last one, the sovereignty of the Leo sun. After Wooming finished speaking, the gift card that he had yet to put away suddenly burst out with a ray of light, and the aura of the sun that was no weaker than that of Afiyuka's constellation rushed over. This is another sun sovereign. Pester was shocked once again. There were only 25 sun sovereigns, and Wooming had taken out 2 of them in just a short while. In the lower level of the courtyard, there were actually 2 sun sovereigns in the 7-digit outer sect. What kind of explosive news was this? Speaking of which, other than Letitia, is there anyone else in no name who has a sun sovereign? It wasn't that Wooming was curious, but it was mainly because there were too few sun sovereigns. White Yuxia and her old enemy together held 20 sun sovereigns. Excluding the additional Afiyuka's constellation, there were only 4 sun sovereigns that were wandering outside. Even if no name was once the largest community in the East District, with only 4 people, it was still extremely difficult to collect sun sovereigns. Therefore, when Wooming knew that the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation was once bestowed by no name, he was indeed shocked. This once again proved that no name was indeed the largest community in the East District. That was the sun sovereign that the Sun Lion once held. Black Rabbit began to explain. Because it was a divine beast that pulled the chariot of the sun god, it coincidentally obtained the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation. However, 3 years ago, it and its other companions were captured by the Demon King that attacked no name. Black Rabbit's expression was a little sad, as if it was recalling what happened 3 years ago. However, Galgi holding the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation proved that Galgi and the others had an undeniable relationship with the demon king that attacked, No Name. Even the sun sovereign has returned to our hands. No Name as former companions will be found in the future. Seeing the depressed Black Rabbit, Wu-Ming opened his mouth to comfort him. Yes, I understand, Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit shook his head and once again revealed a smile. He couldn't always be depressed, he had to be motivated. Speaking of which, who should I give the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation to? Wu-Ming was distressed. At this time, Pest was eager to give it a try. However, Pest didn't even have time to speak. Since Master brought it back, then it's appropriate to give it to Master to use. Letitia suggested. Anyway, I don't need it. 16th Knights shrugged his shoulders. He, 16th Knights, wasn't going to take advantage of it. I don't need it either. I have Dean. Miss Zhou Fei Niao was the same. She didn't want the favor of charity. If there was a need, she would fight for it herself, just like when she obtained Dean. Haruai Buyao also shook his head. I just want to make friends. As for me, Mr. Villo already lent me Argel. Ren was slightly embarrassed when he said this. When Ren first heard that Wu-Ming wanted to give him Argel, he was scared silly. That was a star spirit. Wouldn't it be making a mountain out of a molehill if he gave it to him? However, in the end, under Wu-Ming's tough attitude, Ren had no choice but to borrow it from Wu-Ming. Wu-Ming wasn't going to take it back anyway. Naturally, I don't need it either. Letitia also shook her head. Not to mention that she already had the sun sovereign of the Ophiuchus constellation, she had already gained enough from this loot-sharing conference. Naturally, she didn't need it. Black Rabbit doesn't need it either. Black Rabbit shook his head and his rabbit ears swayed along with it. Black Rabbit was mainly the judge of the gift competition. Even in terms of combat power, Black Rabbit wasn't to be underestimated. He was given 4 godhood equipment by Sakura when he was young and was worshipped by the rabbits as the son of God. Black Rabbit was actually very strong. Lily doesn't need it either. After all, Lily is a support staff. Hee. Lily laughed mischievously. I don't need it either. Wu-Ming shrugged his shoulders helplessly. He had the sun incarnation and didn't need the power of the sun. As for the sun sovereign's ability to summon star beasts, it was just a summon. With the dependent incarnation, it was equivalent to a summon. Therefore, Wu-Ming didn't need the sun sovereign. However, Pest was roaring in his heart. If you don't need it, you can give it to me. Finally, Mr. Pest made a rare speech. Cough cough. According to the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation's ability, as well as everyone's ability, we can just make a reasonable plan. No matter what, he had to fight for it. Wu-Ming looked at Pest meaningfully. Pest was almost scared to death. In the end, Wu-Ming nodded. What Pest said makes sense. Immediately after, Wu-Ming looked at Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit, does the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation have any other abilities? If the sun sovereign was only able to summon star beasts, it would be too cheap. The Black Rabbit stretched out a finger and gently tapped its chin. I remember that the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation can give the wielder the ability to reflect all weapons. It's a pretty good ability. I see. Wu-Ming nodded. Then, give this to 16th Knight. Chapter 841. Wait. Why are you giving it to me? 16th Knights frowned. Was he looking down on him? 16th Knights, you're the only one who fights with your bare hands. You're the most suitable person to receive the gift of reflecting weapons. Wu-Ming explained. Among the people present, if they didn't have long-range attacks, they had weapons and items. Only 16 Knights relied on his code unknown blessing to fight with his fists. Then I don't want it. 16th Knights put his hands behind his head and looked like he was saying, What can you do if I don't want it? Everyone smiled helplessly. He was indeed a problematic child. Wu-Ming shook his head helplessly. Then, I'll have the sovereignty of the sun for now. Does anyone have any objections? 16th Knights immediately waved his hand. No objections, no objections. Everyone else nodded. Only Pest, who was angry but didn't dare to say anything, was looking forward to it. But when he saw Wu Ming's face, Pest was afraid and didn't dare to say anything. Then, this meeting is over. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. Ren nodded. We also have to do some work for the return of the no-name flag. After all, the return of the no-name flag was a huge change for the no-name in the outside world. And the one who prepared for this change was naturally the leader of the community, Ren. Young Master Ren, I'll help later. Black Rabbit volunteered. She basically had nothing to do anyway. I'll help too. Lily also raised her little hand. Thank you for your hard work. Do your best. Zhou Fei Niao smiled. Do your best. Haruai Hiroyuki nodded expressionlessly. If you're free, why don't you come and help everyone? You two problematic children. Black Rabbit showed an angry and helpless expression. But the two pretended not to hear. Black Rabbit was used to it and didn't bother with the two anymore. Then, Black Rabbit turned her gaze to the more reliable Wu Ming. But, I said, let's duel, 16th Knights. Wu Ming suddenly looked at 16th Knights. Oh! 16th Knight's eyes suddenly lit up. Hey. Everyone was shocked. Wait a minute. Why do you want to duel all of a sudden? Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming at a loss. This didn't happen all of a sudden, Black Rabbit. 16th Knights raised her head and closed her eyes. Then, 16th Knights looked at Wu Ming. This is a continuation of the unfinished fight between men. Wu Ming shrugged and admitted this point. Although that's part of the reason, the main reason is that 16th Knight rejected my proposal, which made me very unhappy. Then, Wu Ming stretched out 2 fingers and pointed at 16 Knights. The winner will be able to command the winner to do anything, and the loser will have to give the winner a gift as a reward for winning. What do you think? It was different from the simple if you lose, you have to be obedient. There was also an additional reward. What an interesting condition. I like it. 16 Knights placed her palms on the table, her eyes burning with the flames of war. But then, 16th Knights showed a distressed expression. However, I don't have any extra rewards. How about this? Black Rabbit and I had a gift competition before the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. I received the command to command Black Rabbit to do anything except perverted things. How about this as a reward? 16th Knights emphasized on the word, perverted. The falling clock tower that Wu Ming caught with psychokinesis was the masterpiece of the gift competition between 16th Knights and Black Rabbit. Don't emphasize it on purpose? Black Rabbit was on the verge of breaking down. She felt that she had embarrassed herself. No problem. Wu Ming agreed without hesitation. Don't agree so quickly? Black Rabbit wanted to cry but had no tears. Then, how about we use a countdown to see who can cause more damage to the other in the given time? Wu Ming suggested. After all, they were partners. They couldn't really kill each other. But if they didn't kill each other, they wouldn't be able to finish the competition in a short time. Therefore, a countdown was the best solution. A countdown? It doesn't matter. As long as we can fight each other. 16th Knight smiled as she rubbed her palms. As she finished speaking, 2 pieces of parchment appeared in front of Wu Ming and 16th Knights. It was the contract for the competition. Gift game name. Duel between the two. Use any method to cause damage to the other party in the given time. Contestants, Villo, Saransword, 16th Knights reverse winning condition. After the given time, the damage will be less. Winning reward, command the loser to do anything, 1 time, failure penalty. Provide any gift to the winner. Oath, respect the above content. Based on the judgment of the court system, the gift game will be held. Because there was no organizer, the community at the end was blank. After checking that there were no mistakes, the parchment in front of the 2 burned instantly. That meant that the contract was in effect. All right. Without further ado, let's start. 16th Knight said and walked towards the door. They couldn't fight in the house, right? Wait a minute. Mr. 16th Knights, can't we not fight? Black Rabbit asked anxiously. Even though it was a sparring session, Black Rabbit still didn't want to see her companions hurt each other. But Wu Ming shook his head. Black Rabbit, you have to know that 16th Knights is a problematic child. He won't listen to you. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Black Rabbit turned to look at Wu Ming. Mr. Villo, you just came back from the North District not long ago. Isn't it good for everyone to rest for a while? But this time it was 16th Knight's turn to speak. Black Rabbit, Villo is the most problematic child. You have to know that he was the one who started this fight. I just agreed to it. With a presumptuous smile, 16th Knight pushed open the door and walked out without saying anything. Black Rabbit still wanted to say something to 16th Knights, but 16th Knights left the room and closed the door. Wait. Black Rabbit helplessly reached out a hand to the empty door. Sighing, Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming again. Really, Mr. Villo, you also said. But Black Rabbit's voice stopped abruptly. Because Black Rabbit realized that Wu Ming also disappeared. Master just left using the portal, Black Rabbit. Letitia kindly explained to Black Rabbit. Wu Ming left using the portal when Black Rabbit turned to look at 16th Knights. I'll go check on the two of them. Haruai Toshi said and left with San Mao in his arms. I'm interested in a fight between two freaks. Jiao Yuanfei nodded elegantly at the crowd and left with Haruai Toshi. Then excuse me. After saying that, Letitia stood up and left. It seemed that she was also going to watch. Only Pest, who didn't have much presence, and Ran and Lily who had some conscience were still there. Black Rabbit who was exhausted completely gave up. Black Rabbit sat in her seat, leaned on the table, and yelled as if she had given up. Ah! Really, Black Rabbit doesn't want to care about these problematic adults anymore. Ran and Lily could only smile helplessly. Only Pester remained sulking in his place, jabbing his finger. Sun sovereignty. I need it too. Chapter 842. 16th Knights and Wu Ming walked side by side in the no-name corridor. Although the two were about to duel, Wu Ming and 16th Knights were companions after all. Naturally, they would not destroy their friendship because of a mere duel. Speaking of which, have you figured out the other party's goal? 16th Knights asked as he walked with his hands in his pockets. 16th Knights was not talking about Galji's own goal, but the goal of the person behind Galji. It seems like they want Galji and the others to unlock the seal of the final trial. However, the key items are our flag and the sun's sovereignty. Their plot has basically been destroyed. After all, the key items had been traded by Wu Ming. Because the other party's plan had been destroyed, Wu Ming did not go into detail in the meeting just now. Putting aside the sovereignty of the sun, the flag of no name was unique. After the flag returned to no name, stealing the flag would no longer work. The only way to obtain it again was through transfer, trade, or a gift competition. However, the first two were impossible. If it was a gift competition, only the Demon King would force others to participate in the gift competition with the flag. And with Wu Ming and the other main forces, there was no need to be afraid. Or rather, if a Demon King were to attack now, it would be exactly what No Name wanted. After all, the slogan of defeating the Demon King had already been spread. They had to defeat more Demon Kings. However, it was not that easy to encounter a Demon King. If a Demon King came knocking on their door, they would be very grateful. Did you not get any information about the person behind Galji from him? 16th Knights continued to ask. It was normal for 16th Knights to pay attention to information. After all, 16th Knights was a smart person. If 16th Knights was still in no name during this time, Wu Ming would not have looked for White Yiksha first, but 16th Knights. If there is, I already said it. Let's not talk about the other party being very careful and not leaving any clues. Wu Ming denied 16th Knights. After all, most of the information came from Wu Ming and the others after a series of verifications. Galji and the others did not tell Wu Ming any information. Also, Galji refused to reveal any information. Wu Ming felt that Galji just didn't know. After all, he was just a prop that had been monitored for less than 3 years. Although Wu Ming had thought of trading for some other information, such as Maxwell's, before Wu Ming could ask, Galji directly refused to provide any information to Wu Ming. According to Galji, the two parties were only doing a simple barter transaction. Actually, it could also be considered as Wu Ming's bargaining chip, not being heavy enough. Ling and Aurora exchanged for the no-name flag, Letitia's divinity, the sovereignty of the Ophiuchus constellation, and the sovereignty of the Leo constellation Sunday. Regardless of the quantity, just based on the value, Wu Ming had already gained a huge advantage. Galji, on the other hand, probably wanted to regain some face and indirectly refused to provide Wu Ming with the information. Don't you just want a simple transaction? Then let's just make a simple deal. One hand for the money, and the other for the goods. No money? Then I don't have any goods here either. Thank you for your patronage. Wu Ming was quite dissatisfied with this, but thinking that he could get the no-name flag back this time, Galji's little tricks were nothing. What Wu Ming didn't know was that every gift that Galji gave Wu Ming was something that he had previously planned or had practical abilities. But just because he saw Wu Ming, he was forced to give all these gifts to Wu Ming. It could be said that Wu Ming had skinned a layer of his skin. If Wu Ming knew the bitterness in Galji's heart, he would only think that Galji reaped what he sowed. After all, a layer of skin could be considered Wu Ming giving Galji a small punishment for attacking the box and attacking no name. In short, it's all over. 16 knights took the opportunity to take it. What we need to pay attention to now is fighting. Fighting. Seems like you've been waiting for this for a long time. Wu Ming couldn't help but smile. This time, 16th Knights was probably going to vent all the dissatisfaction that he had been holding in since the last fight. Then, Wu Ming suggested. Let's fight in my fixed barrier. You can do whatever you want there. The Colosseum from last time. 16 Knights was naturally talking about the 6th floor of Nazalik where the two-headed dragon army was trapped at the fire dragon birth ceremony. Let's not go there this time. Let's go somewhere else. Wu Ming said. Golden ripples appeared around him, and the twisted golden staff with a 7-headed dragon coiled around it automatically floated out. Grabbing it, Wu Ming tapped the ground with the tip of the staff. Wave-like ripples spread out and surrounded Wu Ming and 16 Knights. The next second, the two disappeared. Just as they turned the corner, Komoto Asaka and Haruai Biao looked at each other in confusion. I clearly saw the two of them walk over. Could it be that they discovered us? Master and 16 Knights went into Master's fixed barrier, Letitia explained as she walked out from behind them. As Wu Ming's dependent, Letitia could sense Wu Ming's location. That Colosseum? Komoto Asaka naturally remembered how Wu Ming brought them to another space during the fire dragon birth ceremony. Letitia, can't you bring us in? Haruai Biao asked as if he was asking for help. However, Letitia shook her head. Unfortunately, that's an ability brought by Master's grace. I can't interfere. So, we can only wait until the two of them finish fighting? Komoto Asaka sighed helplessly. Staff of Ain's Wu Ming, the 8th floor of the fixed barrier. In the endless wilderness, Wu Ming and 16 Knights faced each other with a distance of more than 10 meters. This place is quite spacious. 16 Knights was quite satisfied. There were no plants, animals, and even the ground was dead. They could do whatever they wanted. This is the fixed barrier of the staff of Ain's Wu Ming. Some are suitable for fighting, while some are suitable for resting. Wu Ming said as he put the staff of Ain's Wu Ming into the golden ripple that opened up again. Then, Wu Ming snapped his fingers and activated the advanced tool creation ability. A huge hourglass suddenly appeared in the sky. Use this as a timer. Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights. However, 16 Knights didn't care. It doesn't matter. Let's start. 16 Knights showed a very happy smile to Wu Ming. Then, with one hand raised, Wu Ming and 16 Knights looked at each other. Neither of them spoke nor did they move. Let's start dash. As soon as he said that, Wu Ming snapped his fingers and the hourglass began to operate. Bang dash, the sound of the ground being crushed was heard. 16 Knights' speed was comparable to the speed of Universe 3 as she instantly burst toward Wu Ming's position. The battle was about to start. Chapter 843. Boom! 16 Knights rushed to Wu Ming's side with the speed of the third universe and smashed his fist down. The place where Wu Ming was standing instantly exploded, and smoke and dust filled the air. As the smoke and dust slowly dispersed, 16 Knights' fist was pressed on the broken ground, and Wu Ming was nowhere to be seen. Still so impatient, 16 Knights. Wu Ming's figure floated in the sky as he teleported away. It's a countdown match after all. I have to seize the time and enjoy the fun of fighting. 16 Knights shook his arm. Because he was a bit agitated, he used a bit more strength to smash the ground. Wuming, who was floating in the sky with psychokinesis, released his power of the will completely and spread it to the ground that 16 knights had punched. Although the ground didn't seem to be broken that badly, and only the surface cracked, Wuming could see through his power of the will that a crack went deep into the ground. Wuming began to wonder if 16 knights would break through this place. The staff of Anziergen's enchantment was connected to the 10 underground floors of Nazalic. It didn't mean that Wuming could only use it on the 8th floor and not the other floors. With 16 knights' fist, if he really wanted to break through this place, Wuming wouldn't have any doubts. Of course, if Wuming kept supplying mana to maintain the enchantment could still be repaired if it wasn't broken through in one go. Just like now. The ground under 16 knights' feet seemed to have gone back in time as it slowly returned to its original state. Can this place repair itself? That's not fun. 16 knights was a bit dissatisfied. Why? Things that are broken automatically repair themselves. That's not fun at all. It turned out that 16 knights was a problematic child, and he was the violent type. Then I won't let it repair itself. It'll save my mana. That's what you wanted. Wuming smiled helplessly. Wuming immediately stopped supplying mana to the enchantment to repair itself. That's more like it. 16th Knights laughed wantonly as he bent his knees and jumped. A large scale of cracks appeared on the ground as 16th Knights rushed into the sky. Unable to fly, he could only rely on this method to attack Wuming. Without any fancy moves, 16 Knights' weapon was just his fists. Facing 16 Knights, Wuming responded with the same method of attack. Punching. The two unadorned fists collided with each other, causing the entire atmosphere to tremble. Visible shockwaves spread out in all directions with their fists as the dividing line. Boom! After a short stalemate, the two separated. Because 16th Knights was a human, just a slightly special human, he naturally couldn't overcome the gravity of the ground. Thus, 16th Knight's body began to automatically descend to the ground. Wuming, on the other hand, couldn't help but go a little higher due to the inertia from the exchange of blows with 16 Knights. Being able to fly is indeed a good thing, 16th Knights, who was kneeling on one knee, teased Wuming. I didn't think of using this to take advantage of you. Because 16th Knights was so aggressive, Wuming subconsciously used the teleportation door to go to the sky. Wuming finished speaking and landed on the ground. Both of them suffered some damage from the exchange of blows, but Wuming's injury was more serious. Shaking his numb right hand, Wuming smiled helplessly. Sure enough, in terms of explosive power, you have the upper hand. If Wuming didn't have the advantage of being in the air, Wuming would be the first to retreat. However, compared to Wuming, who came to the ground to fight with 16th Knights, 16th Knights didn't have the idea of being waterproof. I won't go easy on you. 16th Knights pretended to rush over again. I don't need you to go easy on me either. Wuming swung his fist and met 16th Knight's second punch. Boom! Just like before, the ground was split by the shockwave. At the same time, the ground couldn't withstand the impact of the two and shattered, sending rocks flying everywhere. However, this time, the ground didn't recover. On the contrary, a large number of rocks that flew into the sky fell and buried the two of them. Crash! Wuming released his magic and bounced the rocks away. He wasn't hurt at all. What a convenient ability. 16th Knights, who crawled out of the rocks, said enviously. Although he wasn't hurt, 16th Knights, who didn't have the ability to release energy, was in a sorry state. I have many abilities. Moreover, this is just a simple way to release energy. Wuming smiled and didn't mind. Is that so? Speaking of which, is the glowing rune on your body one of your abilities? 16th Knights pointed at Wuming's arm. Wuming raised his hands. Sure enough, there were some runes on Wuming's hands. It's just a lune rune for strengthening. It only increases strength. I used it when I fought with you before. With the strengthening of the lune rune, Wuming wouldn't be at a disadvantage when fighting with 16th Knights. I didn't pay attention at the time. Forget it, it doesn't matter. It's just a strengthening rune. Watch me break it. 16th Knight said and rushed over again. Come and try. Wuming responded with his fist. The battle was still ongoing. Just as Wuming said before that he wouldn't take advantage of 16th Knights, Wuming didn't use any fancy abilities. He just fought with 16th Knights using his fists. Although their attacks were blocked by each other's fists, It was still a response to 16th Knight's request. 16th Knight also used his fists to fight with Wu Ming. Or rather, he simply didn't have any other abilities. However, 16th Knights didn't need any other abilities. His body was the best weapon. Reality proved that it was just as 16 Knights had said. He would break these runes for Wu Ming. Breaking the Lune rune wasn't a joke. However, every time Wu Ming's Lune rune was broken, Wu Ming would immediately use telekinesis to inscribe a new Lune rune on his body. Gradually, the entire 8th layer of the wilderness was affected by the battle between the two. Basically, there wasn't a single place that was intact. There were craters left behind by fists and legs everywhere. The better places were full of spiderweb-like cracks, and the worse places were completely shattered into pieces. As for the deeper underground, there was no need to guess. It was probably also fragmented. Because Wu Ming cut off the supply of mana to repair the enchantment, the shattered ground of the 8th layer didn't automatically repair itself. Gradually, the 8th layer couldn't hold on any longer. Ka ka ka. The sound of something heavy breaking entered their ears. 16th Knights, who was temporarily separated from Wu Ming, panted heavily with a puzzled expression. What's wrong? Is this place going to collapse? You guessed right. Wu Ming, who was also panting heavily, responded with a smile. After Wu Ming said that, the entire 8th layer collapsed. Chapter 844. Generally speaking, if it was a multi-story building, once a floor collapsed, the people on that floor would automatically fall to the next floor due to gravity. However, Nazalik's underground tomb was a magical underground building transformed from the game into reality. Therefore, it couldn't be defined by common sense. As mentioned before, it wasn't just the 8th floor that didn't mean the other floors of Nazalik didn't exist anymore. It must be known that once the staff of Anziergen's inherent enchantment was activated, it would directly open the 10 underground floors of Nazalik. If only one floor was used, the other floors would be idle and wouldn't disappear or exist. When one floor was destroyed, there were two possibilities for the people in the inherent enchantment. One was to be transferred out of the inherent enchantment, and the other was to be transferred to the other floors. By the way, Wu Ming could control which floor they were transferred to. After the 8th floor collapsed, it completely turned into magic and dissipated. The 8th floor was equivalent to being empty. After all, the 8th floor needed time to repair itself after being destroyed. Of course, if Wu Ming transferred a large amount of magic, the self-repair time would be greatly reduced. Of course, the easiest way was to reactivate Nazalik's inherent enchantment after it was closed. After leaving the 8th floor, Wu Ming and 16 Knights didn't return to No Name. Instead, they went to the other floors of Nazalik. 9th floor, a lounge in the royal suite. Wu Ming and 16 Knights figures automatically appeared. The two sat face to face on a sofa with a coffee table. Great! Great! Ha ha ha! I haven't been this happy in a long time. 16 Knights sat on the sofa and shouted happily. 16 Knights had been bored in her original world for 16 years. Moreover, the bet between 16 Knights and Wu Ming had been delayed for a long time. With the two added together, 16 Knights' mood was very good at the moment. I'm finally done with you. You don't use your brain at all when you fight. As the person involved in the fight with 16 Knights, Wu Ming felt it deeply. Aren't you the same? 16th Knights laughed happily as she looked at Wu Ming. Indeed, Wu Ming had almost released the bestial nature engraved deep within him. After all, Wu Ming wasn't human. It couldn't be helped that he didn't dare. Fighting each other with fists without weapons was the best way to arouse blood. Fortunately, Wu Ming managed to control himself. Otherwise, the match would have been over. Oh! I didn't expect you to have such a good place. 16 Knights, who was done laughing, began to pay attention to her surroundings. Although Wu Ming didn't know why 16th Knights had such knowledge, Wu Ming could tell that 16th Knights was shocked by the excellence of the VIP suites on the 9th floor. After all, this was a place for players to escape from reality. Naturally, they would make it more comfortable. I kind of inherited it. This is all designed by the predecessors. Leaning on the sofa, Wu Ming snapped his fingers. 2 glasses of wine appeared in front of Wu Ming and 16th Knights. This is a place to rest. Water and wine are provided for free. Wu Ming explained. Of course, there was only water and wine. After all, this was a game. There was no such thing as eating, so they could only drink some water and wine. If there's such a good place, you should have brought me here earlier, 16th Night said as she unceremoniously raised her wine glass. Then you and the two of them would have caused a ruckus here. Wu Ming also responded without holding back. The two of them naturally referred to Jio Yuasuka and Kasuga Hibiya, the two problem children. Ha ha ha, how could that be? You have to believe me. We are companions. 16th Nights waved her hand jokingly. Speaking of which, I was tricked by you in the end. The last thing 16th Nights was referring to was the fight just now. When the fight between the two broke on the 8th floor, there was only a bit of sand left in the hourglass. Then, 16th Nights discovered that she was healed by something. What 16th Nights didn't know was that Nazalik's teleportation never had any light. It was just a sudden disappearance. Therefore, the light that appeared when the 8th floor broke wasn't a sign of teleportation. It was the activation of the healing rune that Wu Ming designed in advance. That was the Lune rune that Wu Ming buried in the ground while fighting with 16th Nights. Wu Ming intentionally lured 16th Nights to not stay in the same place to fight. Moreover, 16th Nights, who was lured by Wu Ming, wouldn't go to the same place to fight. Only then would the healing runes in every inch of the 8th floor not be destroyed by 16th Nights. It was precisely because Wu Ming and 16th Nights didn't continue fighting in the same place that their fight affected the entire 8th floor. In the end, the healing rune was activated. The hourglass in the sky also ran out of sand, and the time was up. Then, if I didn't guess wrong, the result should be a draw. 16th Nights said as a contract appeared in front of 16th Nights. Sure enough, there were two victors on the contract. Victors, Villo, Silensword, 16 Nights in reverse. However, there was no such thing as a draw in the gift competition, so the two of them were also losers. Losers, Villo, Silensword, 16 Nights in reverse. In this way, both sides could order the other side once. What a pity. I originally wanted to heal myself in the end. I didn't expect to include you in the healing range. Wu Ming drank a mouthful of wine without blushing. I almost believed you. 16th Night smiled casually and drank the wine in one gulp. The victory condition on the contract was like this. Victory condition. After the time is up, the damage taken will be less. Wu Ming had implanted healing runes in the shattered ground of the 8th floor. When these healing runes were activated, the effect was to completely heal the two of them. In this way, after the time was up, the two of them would be the ones who didn't receive any damage. Hey, this is completely the same as when I competed with Black Rabbit. 16th Nights was quite depressed. A competition was to determine the winner and loser. Why would it be a draw every day? But this time, 16th Nights was quite happy. So 16th Nights didn't want to pursue Wu Ming. Here, this is Black Rabbit's command authority. 16th Nights took out a piece of parchment from the gift card and threw it to Wu Ming. All right, give me the sovereignty of Leo Sunday, 16th Night said bluntly as he extended his hand towards Wu Ming. You guessed it. Wu Ming took out a ball of light and threw it to 16th Nights. Even an idiot can see that you want to give me the sovereignty of the Leo constellation Sunday. That's why you want to compete with me. I'm just curious as to how you lost the sovereignty of the sun to me. Chapter 845. Just like how Wu Ming sent Ophiuchus constellation's sun sovereign into Letitia's body, 16 Nights merged the sun sovereign into his own body. Indeed, Wu Ming never thought of using the sun sovereign from the start. After knowing that Leo constellation's sun sovereign could deflect weapons, Wu Ming's first thought was to reverse 16 Nights. Firstly, 16 Nights was the most suitable for Leo constellation's sun sovereign, but there was another more important reason. After all, Wu Ming couldn't stay in the box world forever, but the rest of No Name could. After he left, No Name would have to rely on his companions. Thus, Wu Ming would leave whatever he could for them. Of course, Wu Ming also didn't need the Sun Sovereign. You can't be too obsessed with power, but you can't run away from your own power. Wu Ming's advice to Letitia had the same effect on Wu Ming. Since the Sun Sovereign couldn't give Wu Ming more power, it was like a chicken rib, so it was better to give it to the rest of No Name. Thus, Wu Ming was glad that he didn't fight with 16 knights. If he did, there would have been a winner. In that case, he wouldn't have been able to give 16 knights the Sun Sovereign of Leo constellation. After all, normal methods couldn't make 16 knights except the Sun Sovereign of Leo constellation. Wu Ming had no choice but to use this method to understand the agreement between him and 16 knights. Now you know what method I used. After replying to 16 knights, Wu Ming drank all the wine in his cup. Although I know, it's a fact that I was tricked by you. It's really annoying. 16 knights smiled proudly. Look, even if he was tricked, 16 knights would still continue to smile. As for the reason, let's make it clear in advance. Next time, you have to fight with me properly. No one is going easy. Use your full strength. 16 Knight's tone was serious. His eyes were burning with fighting spirit. It seemed like he was going to fight for real. After all, they had already experienced fighting each other. Next they would have to fight with real swords and spears. 16 Knights didn't only use his fists to fight, he still had trump cards he hadn't used yet. Forget it. If we really fought like that, Black Rabbit would cry herself dry. Wu Ming shook his head. One had to know that a real fight was no joke. Wu Ming and 16 Knights were both strong in the box. If they fought, they would be injured would be light, but they would definitely be heavily injured. Their lives might even be in danger. Although 16 Knights was indeed looking for excitement, the two of them were not mortal enemies. There was no need to fight to the death, right? Previously in the conference room, Black Rabbit was about to cry when he found out that Wu Ming and 16 Knights were going to fight. If it really came to a real fight like 16 Knights said, Black Rabbit might really cry. Forget it then. We'll talk about it later. 16th Knights, who seemed to have thought of something, also chose to give up. It's about time. We should go out. Wu Ming realized that the two had been away from No Name for a long time. It was time to go back. Hey, you should have other spaces. Why don't you take me for a walk? 16 Knights said as her eyes lit up. Wu Ming showed a helpless expression. Because Wu Ming knew that this was the light of a problem child. No Name's headquarters. Wu Ming and 16 Knights left the corridor. The two of them seemed to have removed their invisibility and appeared out of thin air. In the end, Wu Ming didn't take 16 Knights for a walk. After all, if the other two problem children found out about this, they would either have a falling out or pester Wu Ming all the time. It's really unfair. Since 16 Knights also visited your private space, we have to do the same. At that time, the two of them would probably say something like that. If that's the case, why not refuse from the beginning? That's what Wu Ming thought. However, 16 Knights began to fuss over this. You're really boring. You were so bold when you were fighting. 16 Knights' expression was as if she encountered something boring. To put it simply, she was quite bored. Didn't I say that Nazalik's enchantment is just a big tomb? There's really nothing to see. Wu Ming sighed helplessly and tried to persuade her again. As if there was no other way, Wu Ming used his trump card. If you're really not happy, I can find White Yiksha to fight with you. I don't want to fight White Yiksha now. I still have self-awareness. Although 16 Knights said so, the smile on her face told Wu Ming that 16 Knights was not afraid of fighting White Yiksha. Wu Ming didn't care much about it. After thinking for a while, he said to 16 Knights, "Our flag has returned anyway. Presumably, there will be a lot of gift competitions that you need to participate in. As an organization, the most important thing for a community was its name and flag. The community's name and flag could be used for publicity to make the community more famous and drive the development of the community. In the past, because the flag and name of No Name had been taken away, they could only use the slogan "Down with the Demon King" to promote themselves. Now that the flag had been recovered, they had to vigorously promote themselves. And the best way to advertise was to win a large number of gift contests. After all, the gift contest was the main theme of the Suitland world. Only by winning the gift contest and showing their strength would the people of the Suitland remember them and be valued by other communities. Only then could they develop themselves. Even if No Name still didn't have a name, as long as the logo on the No Name flag was shown. Of course, it didn't mean that the slogan "Down with the Demon King" that No Name previously advertised was invalid. It was just a two-pronged approach. That's true. We have to get busy. When it came to the gift competition, 16 knights would become excited. But then, 16 knights looked at Wu Ming again. You just said you, right? Then what are you going to do? Don't tell me you're going to leave again? 16 knights had a smile on his face, but his eyes revealed a trace of seriousness. As a smart person, when 16 knights first saw Wu Ming leave, he deduced that Wu Ming had something he couldn't let go of in the outside world. Wu Ming wasn't like the three of them. When he was first invited to the boxings, he was already prepared to give up everything in the outside world. Although Wu Ming said that he came to the boxings because of a letter, after Wu Ming left the boxings, 16 knights asked Black Rabbit how many letters were sent. The result was naturally 3 letters. In other words, if Wu Ming didn't lie, the one who used the letter to invite him definitely wasn't Black Rabbit. Of course, it couldn't be said that Wu Ming was lying to them. After all, Wu Ming said from the beginning that he came to the boxings to find his body. But this also meant that after finding his body, even if he didn't leave no name, he wouldn't stay in the boxings for a long time. For now, I won't leave for the time being. Wu Ming shook his head. No matter what, Wu Ming came this time to find his original body. No matter what, he had to find his original body first. Also, Wu Ming looked in the direction of his room. He still hadn't completed that person's request. Chapter 846. No Name. Headquarters, Wu Ming's room. Vera sat alone on Wu Ming's bed, quietly waiting outside the window. Gotcha. The door opened, and Vera subconsciously turned her head. It was Wu Ming. Vera used a bit of strength and jumped from the bed to the ground. She ran to Wu Ming's side in an extremely cute manner. Welcome back, Vera said as she pulled on Wu Ming's sleeve. I'm back. But after saying that, Wu Ming felt that something was wrong. This was supposed to be his room. How did Vera manage to turn the tables on him? But it didn't matter. After laughing at himself, Wu Ming squatted down and apologized to Wu Ming. I'm sorry, Vera, for leaving you here alone. Before, when Lily came to find Wu Ming and told him that everyone else had returned, Wu Ming first brought Lily and Vera to Pest's room and found Pest, who was still sulking. Then, Wu Ming brought the 3 of them to his room and found Letitia, who was cleaning the room. After that, Wu Ming, who had the intention to hold a meeting that belonged to a No Name, left Vera, who was not a member of No Name, in his room. Although the meeting just now wasn't that important, and Wu Ming did agree to let Vera stay by his side, it was still a matter of principle. Wu Ming bringing the leader of the northern community into his own community was already against the rules in the eyes of ordinary people. He couldn't possibly bring the leader of the northern community into his own community's meeting. It's fine. Regardless of whether Vera understood the depth of Wu Ming's apology or not, Vera didn't seem to blame Wu Ming. Finally, Wu Ming looked at Vera's pair of eyes that were the color of willow, the wisps rather seriously. Then next, let's go settle Maxwell's matter once and for all. After separating from Wu Ming, 16th Knights returned to the previous conference room. Opening the door as expected, only Hey Bunny and Ren were in the conference room dealing with matters. Mr. 16th Knights, did you and Mr. Villo finish fighting? In fact, it wasn't like what Wu Ming said before, that a long time had passed. He and 16th Knights didn't fight for long. In fact, it was just the principle of happy times always pass by quickly. However, it was also because Wu Ming deliberately shortened the duel time. Although I don't want to admit it, happy times are always short. Shrugging with a smile, 16th Knight walked to her seat at the conference table and sat down. In short, I'm here also came to help. With the return of the No Name flag, not only did they need to participate in the bestowment competition in the future, there were also various miscellaneous matters that needed to be dealt with and prepared in advance. Although Wu Ming did not explicitly point this out, 16 Knights was clear about it, and Ren the Black Rabbit was dealing with these matters. Mr. 16th Knights also came to help. Hey Bunny was a little worried since she was a problem child. She looked at Jiao Fei Niao and Haruai Buyao and left. Hey, Black Rabbit, no matter what, I'm still a smart person. Be careful, or I'll rip your ear off. 16 Knights grinned, looking like he was joking at the same time. Ears can't be. Hey Bunny panicked and covered her ears. That. 16th Knights, come and help. Ren smiled awkwardly and wiped a drop of cold sweat from his forehead. You don't have to take 16th Knight's word seriously, but if you don't take it seriously, then 16th Knights will take it seriously. And there was one more thing to know. Although her fists were fiercer than most of the people in No Name, 16th Knights was indeed smart. I misunderstood Mr. 16th Knights. It's Hey Bunny's fault. Who told you problem children to always do things that annoy people? 16th Knights felt that Hey Bunny's annoyance was actually referring to her ears. Okay, I'll pull your ears if you keep talking. I know. Don't always covet Hey Bunny's ears. Speaking of which, Ren opened his mouth again. Where did Mr. Villo go? 16th Knights picked up a document on the table and answered without looking up. He went to find his body. Leaving this sentence that confused Hey Bunny and Ren, 16th Knights began to work. North District, 54-545 Outer Realm Gate Square. It was already night time. Because the Devil King's attack had already retreated, but after all, the Devil King's attack had just ended, so there were still not many people using the Realm Gate. There were only some community members who came to help Salamandra deal with the aftermath. Among them, there was no lack of community members who belonged to the same class as Salamandra, which was ironic. Black and purple ripples appeared in a corner of the Realm Gate Square. Wuming and Vera walked out of the teleportation gate. After all, they had been here once, so Wuming's teleportation gate could be used. Let's go, Vera. Let's walk around the city. Hearing Wuming's words, Vera could not help but tighten her grip on Wuming's sleeves, as if she was afraid of being left behind. Don't worry, Vera, as long as that Maxwell guy appears, I will definitely take care of him this time. Vera hesitated, but in the end, she nodded silently. Before coming to the North District, Wuming told Vera to be bait to lure Maxwell out, but Vera was 100% unwilling. As a last resort, Wuming could only persuade her and repeatedly promise her, as well as entice her by buying snacks. Finally, Vera reluctantly agreed. But there was nothing he could do about it. According to the information he gathered, Maxwell was only interested in Vera, so he could only use Vera as bait. Although it was bait, Wuming was not prepared to let the fish eat the bait. But, why did Wuming choose the 54545 Outer Realm as the location of the operation? Firstly, it was because there was a familiar local snake, Salamandra, so it was easier to get things done. Secondly, Wuming was still very worried about the seal of absolute evil. If the enemy's plan was really to release absolute evil, Wuming did not think that the other party would give up. Even if there was no key item to lift the seal, Wuming did not think that the other party would give up so easily. One must know that the Box Court was a world full of miracles. Maxwell alone, the 4-digit Demon King, had a resurrection ability that Wuming could not understand. He had not found the original body yet, so he was very suspicious of whether the person behind Maxwell and the others had more strange unknown methods. Of course, if Wuming overestimated the other party, then it was nothing. He could just treat it as taking Vera shopping. In short, it was always right to be cautious. Immediately, Wuming brought Vera to stroll around the city. How did the two of them enter the city? Wuming's teleportation door was super useful. Wuming was very interested in the city. After all, the last time he came, Wuming did not have a good look around. Chapter 847. Needless to say, the name of the City of Glowing Flames matched the current situation of the city very well. Numerous ironworks covered the entire city of Glowing Flames. Flames emerged from the ironworks and dyed the entire city of Glowing Flames in the color of flames. Then, Wuming lifted his head and looked at the huge chandelier hanging in the middle of the city. The environment in the North District is extremely harsh. It's said that the City of Glowing Flames actually relies on this huge chandelier to maintain its heat, Wuming explained to Vera. However, as someone from the North District, Vera actually didn't need Wuming's introduction. Even so, Vera didn't interrupt him. However, Wuming quickly realized this. I almost forgot that you're from the North District. Wuming laughed awkwardly. At that moment, Wuming stopped explaining to Vera. After all, this was completely showing off in front of Master Guan. The two of them walked like this, taking a stroll and enjoying the scenery around them. The warm colors brought about by the ironworks and the huge chandelier made Wuming unable to feel the slightest bit of coldness. Moreover, coupled with the desolate but simple North District land, the visual effect was pretty good to Wuming. Wuming, who was used to the warm spring scenery of the East District, felt that the scenery in front of him had a different flavor. However, apart from these, there were other sceneries, such as the restored buildings and the buildings that were being restored. To be able to restore the damage caused by the Demon King's attack so quickly, it can be said that they're quite capable. Wuming couldn't help but sigh. One had to know that the Demon King's attack on the outer gate of the 54545 division happened during the day. However, the entire city of glowing flames was almost restored by tonight. This was a completely different world from the Fire Dragon birth ceremony held between the 399999 division and the 40000000 division. Wuming even suspected that the Fire Dragon birth ceremony was still in ruins. After all, there wasn't any strong community between the outer gates. With no intention of helping, Wuming continued to stroll around with Vera. After all, seducing Maxwell was their main goal. However, as they strolled around, Wuming and Vera arrived at Salamandra's headquarters in Blaze City. Perhaps due to the lack of manpower, there was only one member of Salamandra in charge of guarding the door. When this member of Salamandra saw a suspicious person loitering in front of his house, he immediately became vigilant. What person? However, when he saw that it was Wuming, he immediately exclaimed. Although Wuming was not very clear about it, the matter of him and Ran causing a ruckus at the Fire Dragon birth ceremony in Salamandra could be said to have spread like wildfire throughout Salamandra. The Salamandra member swallowed his saliva and asked with a trembling voice. You. What business do you have with Salamandra? I was passing by, so I came to take a look. Don't worry, I don't mean any harm. Seeing the other party's expression as if he had seen a ghost, Wuming couldn't help but laugh. There might be a small situation later. After saying this softly, Wuming took Vera and left. Looking at Wuming and Vera leaving in the distance, the Salamandra member who was guarding the door felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders as he sat on the ground and panted heavily. That day at the Fire Dragon birth ceremony, he was one of the people who had to endure Wuming's pressure. He, who was left with a deep psychological shadow, was able to withstand it. He thought that he was already very impressive. He sat on the ground and rested for a short while. After checking that there were no suspicious people around, he immediately ran back to his home base. It seemed like he was going to report to his family. However, during the brief moment when no one was guarding the main door, a few indistinct figures in black appeared out of thin air at the main door. Following that, the few of them silently walked into Salamandra. One of the black-clothed figures parted ways with the others and quietly walked in the direction that Wuming and Vera had left. And Wuming, who had already left the entrance of Salamandra, had already strolled around. Wuming and Vera began to walk towards the outskirts of Glowing Flame City. Reality proved that there really wasn't much to stroll around in Glowing Flame City that was full of ironworks. Wuming's excitement had already passed. It's almost time to go, Vera. Wuming suddenly said to Vera, which made Vera extremely puzzled. Vera tilted her head and looked at Wuming speechlessly, as if to say, "You don't need me to be the bait anymore? After all, the other party might not really be near this door. Let's go somewhere else to take a look." However, as soon as he finished his words, a flame and frost attack suddenly attacked Wuming's face. Boom! The scorching flame and the bone-piercing frost reacted and a violent explosion suddenly sounded. The mushroom-shaped explosion floated in the outskirts of Glowing Flame City, which was where Wuming and Vera were. Moreover, this explosion attracted the attention of the people in Glowing Flame City. At the same time, it also attracted the attention of the people in black who had sneaked into Salamandra. However, after realizing that the explosion was caused by their companion, the people in black calmed down and continued to sneak in. "Where do you think you're taking my bride?" A clown-like voice rang out, and at the same time, a clown-like figure appeared in the smoke produced by the explosion. "You really don't learn to be obedient, Maxwell." That's right, this person was Maxwell, whom Wuming had painstakingly searched for. At this moment, he appeared in front of Wuming openly. Hugging Vera, Wuming floated by the mushroom cloud that was about to dissipate and looked down at Maxwell, who was faintly visible in the smoke. As early as when he entered Glowing Flame City, Wuming had activated his mental power to the maximum. However, Wu-ming also knew that Maxwell had the ability to teleport, so he didn't expect to be able to catch him with his mental power, not to mention that the other party might have the gift of shielding him from detection. Therefore, Wu-ming chose to spread his mental power in a range of 1,000 meters around him. As long as someone approached, Wu-ming would definitely be able to detect it. However, in order to prevent Maxwell from using the gift of shielding him from detection, Wu-ming said, "It's about time to leave." After all, with Wu-ming's current understanding of Maxwell, if he was nearby, he would definitely appear after hearing this sentence. As expected, Maxwell launched an attack on Wu-ming. Moreover, Maxwell seemed to have used the gift of shielding him from detection. Before he launched the attack, Wu-ming didn't notice Maxwell's trace at all. However, with Maxwell's harmless attack and Wu-ming's extremely fast reaction speed, Maxwell's attack didn't have any effect at all. Of course, if it was just a greeting, Maxwell did a great job. "Ah, let go. My bride." Maxwell covered half of his face with one hand as if his mental state wasn't normal. Regarding this, Wu-ming frowned slightly and seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied. He still wanted to try to get some information about his main body from Maxwell, but Maxwell's mental state was already somewhat abnormal. However, the slightly abnormal Maxwell's intelligence seemed to have decreased, and his actions were more unscrupulous. This large-scale explosion was the best proof. However, even if Maxwell was unscrupulous, it didn't mean that Wu-ming was unscrupulous. He didn't want to fight with Maxwell in Flame City. "Maxwell, I'm going to bring Vera out of Flame City. You have to follow me," Wu-ming deliberately said as if he was mocking him. "If you really can't keep up with me, then Vera will belong to me." Although it was a joke, Vera's face still turned slightly red. After that, without waiting for Maxwell's reply, Wu-ming immediately opened the teleportation door and brought Vera out of Flame City. "My bride!" Maxwell shouted. His figure flashed and he disappeared as well. Without a doubt, he was chasing after Wu-ming, or rather Vera. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.